we're just going to start with kind of the pile that started it all, which is very interesting, right? To me, it's very interesting because what I like about this is when it comes to inspiration, we started this in part 1 of the series about creating that making station. And this making station really helped me out. It helped me with some ideas. Obviously, you can see that the tree bin definitely has been loaded up because I was working on a lot of tree ideas and then, you know, altering deer and just different things. And that's what I'm trying to hopefully inspire you in this live. Talk about ideology, share some of my favorite ideas for altering things. Now, some of these things are going to be seasonal. Some are going to be some everyday stuff. Some are even going to be old retired product because I'm one of those makers that even though I am a designer for product, I don't believe that just because a product is no longer available that I am not allowed to use it. I just don't buy that. I know some people disagree and they're like, you shouldn't use something that's discontinued. Well, too bad, so sad, because it was available and I have it and many people have it. And I think that keeping that inspiration going is what is so important to being a maker versus a brand, right? I'm a maker at heart. So we'll just kind of give you the overview. I think I'm going to start. This is a good one. It's a classic. I've probably shown it every year, but it never gets tired. So I'm going to talk about that because we're going to get into trees first, and then we'll just go through a lot of different ideas. We'll try to watch the chat and kind of take you through it. I agree, Stacy. Retired or not, we love it. That's just how it is as a maker. We love the stuff, and that's okay. All right. So I do have a glitter station. Here's another funny thing. And I should have taken a picture. I even said that last night because there was some glittering going on, and it was I say that glitter is an outdoor activity, except for these. If I'm using mica or rock candy, these are indoor because neither one of these become airborne. But there was some glitter that I needed done, and I said to Mario, I'm like, you want to go and glitter some stuff? But it has to be out in the garage. So he was outside at like, I don't know, midnight, cold, hat, heater, all that to do it. All right.
It was awesome.
It was fun. So we're going to start with just inking some trees. We'll go with that. It is cool that, you know, when you look around, you see a lot of different trees out there at craft stores, and I really want to just talk about trees, right? Because it is important that if you're going to be doing trees, inking trees, making trees, that you start with the right kind of tree. Not all tree is created equal. The inspiration behind these, I remember our friends Monica and Joy, we were here one year and we saw something on Pinterest about going and buying bottle brush trees. I think back at that time it was like Kmart, right? And you had to buy trees, and then you had to bleach them because they were that really weird blue, green, black color, and you had to bleach them and then rinse them and then you ink them. And I thought, oh, that's cool, but why don't they sell any white trees just so you can ink them? Now, there are many trees out there, so I don't want you to think that this technique only works on ideology trees. That's not true at all. But what you need to make sure if you are going to buy other trees is that the tree that you're using is made out of a natural material. So the ones for ideology, these are called Woodlands. They're sold in a pack, like there's a 3-pack of just the large, and then there's the multi-pack where you get a big one, you get mediums, and you get these just adorable little baby ones. But these are made out of a natural material, sisal, like the same thing they make rope out of, is what these are made out of. And that's important because it's going to take color. And the kind of color it takes could be any kind of water-based ink. That could be any spray inks that you have. It could be dilutions. It could be mica stains. It could be distress spray. It could be oxide. It could be any type of coloring. It could even be food coloring, Kool-Aid. It really can be anything because this material will absorb color. A lot of stores are selling trees, but they are made out of PVC. They're made out of plastic. So just be careful if you get a tree and you're like, oh, I'm just going to dip it in ink like he does, and oh, why isn't it working? Because you need something that's going to be porous. It's very interesting, of course, because when we're working on these, having trees that are, to me, are kind of the right size, and there's just some thought that goes into it. I mean, I love the fact that we've changed these throughout the year, but this has kind of been the one that has stuck with us, where Woodlands used to come all the way down to the base. Woodland base used to be thicker, and so now we have a nice thin base. I love that exposed wire at the bottom. I think it's great, and these are all handmade, so they're just going to be slightly random, but they will all work the same in Woodland. So here's how we do the inking. Now, when it comes to inking, again, you can use whatever it is you want to work with. You can work with any kind of sprays. I prefer to work with spray stains, of course. You can also use oxide. Let's do a little rustic. Love rustic wilderness. Rustic wilderness is the ultimate color for this. If you want to use your mica stains, you can, but I will tell you this just from playing around yesterday, that the mica stains, although they're great for color, and I will add one, they don't add a lot of shimmer to the tree like the way they do on paper. So if you're going to use the mica stain on this, just think of it more for, I'm going to use a little speckled egg. Think of it more for color than you would shimmer, right? So I am going to use it because they're like, where is that juniper? There we go. That is a good color. I also love a little holly branch. So if you're going to use mica stain on the trees, no problem, because it's still a stain, right? Mica stain, just like spray stain, just has a shimmer. Just didn't want you to expect to see a lot of shimmer on the tree, because it just doesn't work like that. Okay. Next up is going to be a box. Hey Mario, would you mind grabbing some gloves out of the closet? Thanks. I think I'm going to glove it up because this is pretty early. Anytime you're going to do a lot of inking, a lot of spraying, you'll probably see me put gloves on quite a bit in this. I probably should take off this thumb ring. That's not going to be good. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll probably do that a few times. All right, we got to see if I can stick my pork chop hands in these gloves. I need just some bigger gloves, I think. But I don't like gloves that are too sloppy, because then I can't feel anything. But I also like, you know, black gloves. Fancy. Okay. Fancy. Right. So when you're working, I agree, but Rustic Wilderness is really good. But here's the thing, Tiffany. Rustic Wilderness is also really good when you start mixing it, which I'm sure that you have already done. That's what I love about certain colors, and when we're adding colors into the line, by changing up what you mix it with, it really takes on a whole different play. All right. So woodland trees. So the basic inking, I'll get into inking before I get into this technique, just kind of creating the ombre color. You can use really any kind of medium. I like to work in a splat box. I like to work on a paper towel first. I like to hold the tree, so that's why it's just nice to have a glove. You can use a plastic bag, whatever. Yeah, Dr. Tim. Just because it's going to allow you to easily move the tree, right? That's the other thing you want to keep in mind. If you just want to do one color, well, then just do one color. But if you want to mix some different colors, it is going to be important, use a little mica stain, that you're able to just kind of move that tree around, because this way you can get color where you want it to be. So see how you're already changing the whole look? Because you have the ability to do that. And I think if you don't have a glove on, you're just going to try to, you know, push it along, and that's really not going to be ideal, right? Then we're going to take a little bit of some peeled paint, because, well, I love a little peeled paint. And I'm just looking and seeing but see that color already? See how that light's going to hit it? It's just going to do its own thing. So you have the option of how saturated you want this to be. As I mentioned, these woodlands are designed to be incredibly porous. So when it takes the color, it actually sucks it all the way into the core, kind of like a straw. If you want it more saturated, you can certainly do that. You have the ability just to let it dry on its own. Or if you get it a little too juicy, you can always go and take that same paper towel and just kind of give it a little squish. Now, the other cool thing about these trees, and we're going to touch base on that in a bit, is how you let them dry. In other words, the shape. So see how by squeezing it, it made the bristles go in a downward motion versus sticking out, kind of like a porcupine. By doing that, they'll dry this way. Okay, so you get to also kind of control the shape of that when you're working with these trees. So just going to let this one dry. I like it. I think it's a great color. You can stand it up. You can lay it down on a tray. You can put it outside. You can do whatever it is that you want to create. All right. So let's talk about this. That was just kind of the basic inking. So to achieve this look is quite simple. Again, you can work with any kind of stains, whether you're working with oxides or inks. But what you're going to want is just a little tray of water. And I talk about this. You can use any kind of little cup, right? You want something that's going to be kind of deep enough that your tree is going to go in. I'm going to just do this medium-sized tree, so these cups are going to work fine. They're just little plastic cups that I picked up at the dollar store, right? But you can use anything. You can use a glass. You can do anything, because these are water-based inks. It's going to come out. But also put it in a container, because we're going to be dipping into these, kind of like Easter eggs. We're going to dip into these. And if you don't have it in another container, you can risk that kind of spilling over, and that's just, it's not worth the mess. But here's the general thing. We'll take a little rustic. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just take one of the trees, and I'm just going to spray this and spin it around. And you can see that I'm pretty close to this, moving it around, getting that nice saturation of color. All right, let's see, what do I want to put on this one? I think I'm just going to, I'm going to jazz it up just a little bit. Okay, so this is going to be a mica stain. This is holly branch. So holly branch is going to have a little bit of kind of that yellow to it, but that's going to be great. So here's the color so far. You can see that holly branch here. It catches the light. All right. So the simplicity is that you're going to take this and you're just going to dip it into the water, and how far you dip is what's going to start removing the color, right? So when you lay that in there, you can see how that just takes that color. See, kind of like Easter egg. Take that same paper towel and squeeze the end of that to take the ink out. Look at that. That's simple, right? You can see that the color goes from dark to light, and you can keep going back. You can go into the same cup, you can go into a different cup. You didn't really create a dye like you think you did, but I just dipped just the tip of that. Same thing, paper towel. See how that got lighter? See how simple that is, just to completely change the gradation of color in a tree just by using water. Now, once your paper towel is kind of saturated, some people save them, they collage with them. You do you. You do whatever it is that you want to do with that paper towel, but you want to start with something clean if you're going to work with a different color. So this one, let's take a little salvage patina. We're also going to take some speckled egg, and I'll even use a little frosted juniper mica. We're going to go for a trifecta. We're going to go for stain. We're going to go for a little bit of oxide. All right, look at this. Oh, such a good color. Love a little salvage patina. That's good. Now, if you're going to use oxide, and I'll show you a finished tree with oxide. Oxide, remember, is a fusion of dye and pigment, so it's going to be somewhat opaque. So I'm going to put that kind of near the bottom. Now I can see already that my glove, see that? It's got some green on it. So just take your inky towel, clean that off. I don't mind that little bit of green showing up, but see what I mean? Like that, it started to just wick that right away. And let's go into, I'll take a little bit of this frosted juniper. Now you can use ice spruce. Ice spruce is another favorite. Okay, going there. And I'm going to go back just one more time with that patina. Look at that color. Already beautiful. Now I'm going to dip, but I don't want to go into the green if I have a different color. That's why I have different cups just for different color families. Dip it once. You don't have to hold it. You can always go back, but there's no point in sucking out all the color by holding it in there. The longer you hold it in the water, the more the color is going to come out. Look at that beautiful fade. Wow. And it just gets better just doing the tip, because I really like to create that fade. Look at that. It just completely changes the look of dyeing trees. Very, very simple, right? It's just simple that when you're creating this, you can create all sorts of, and you just see when the light hits it, how it creates a whole different look than if you're just doing solid trees. There's nothing wrong with solid trees, but it is nice to know that when you're inking these, you can dip them. Now the question is, do you have to do this while the ink is wet or while the ink is dry? It doesn't really matter. I will say though that if you do it while the ink is wet, it's easier for that ink to immediately come out, because distress stains, oxide, spray stains, they're never permanent. So if you let this dry, could you then go back in, like if you were going to do the whole compartmental making? Yes, but you would have to hold it in the water longer for that to re-wet the whole entire thing, reactivate it, and start pulling this out. So my advice is that if you want to go for a blended tree, just kind of do it as part of the process. Don't just sit there and do your spraying, all that. It's really, really simple. If the water gets too mucky, I change it when I notice that when I'm dipping it in, it's not actually taking on any color because there's too much dye, but you would have to be doing a ton of trees to actually change that out. So it's really that simple. Super, super easy to dye trees, right? Got that. And yes, the splat box is good. The other tip, of course, in the splat box, you see that I do the paper towel. And you could pretty much always see, if I'm doing a lot of sprays on something like a tree or even a background, that paper towel is going to absorb quite a bit. If you don't want to use paper towels and maybe you have some type of scrap paper in your creative space, just use that, just because it just absorbs from making a pretty big mess. All right? Okay, so let me just move this juice out of the way. I'll give this to Mario. And we'll take that. There we go. Thanks. So let's cap these up. Just get them out of the way for now. I'll keep the gloves on for just a bit, just to talk about what we can do with trees, because I am a fan of the woodland tree. I do. I've loved these trees for years, and I love the ability to just create different things. So as I mentioned, when it comes to trees, I also like to have a little sparkle station. Okay, so here's some things to know about trees. Let's take a look at this one. So this is actually this tree. Okay, same woodland tree. It's exactly the same tree, just ink different. But you see the design of it, the shape of it. What I love about these being that natural material is that when you're inking, you have the ability to create however you want these needles to go. If you just dab it off and let it dry, it's going to dry kind of prickly. This has a little bit of downward motion because that's all I did. But this one, I wanted it to be more compact. So when I'm inking it and I wrap the paper towel to dry it, I squeeze the paper towel around it and I let it dry inside the paper towel. You can see that the paper towel, that little dent and pivot, that's what's going to create this whole effect. By letting it dry that way, it adds to the shape. If you wanted this to fluff up again, you can simply just spray it with water or ink and really everything will just whoop, come right back to life, okay? So that's kind of a cool thing to know because when you're creating trees, you might want trees for different shapes, all right? So what can we do with the trees? Well, I like to add some different bits to them, and you can see that when I do create trees, I kind of go into tree mode, right? Very compartmental thinking. I'll be doing a lot of inking of the trees or ombre, whatever that is, and then I will go in and do sparkle. So what can you use for sparkle? Well, some of my favorites. Distressed glitter. This is rock candy. What I love about that, of course, it's a clear glitter. It does not become airborne, so this could be indoors. It will never fly in the air. It's just that how it's designed. Distressed mica flakes. These are synthetic mica, and I love that synthetic mica because it just gives such a nice vintage vibe to it. So I use both of those for sparkle. For adhesive, you can use glossy accents. You can use Collage medium, and you can also use resist spray. Now resist spray is going to give you the lightest application of sparkle, and I would only use this with glitter, but you could spray it onto a tree and you would get a very, very faint dusting. Really not my favorite for trees, but my favorite for other things. When it comes to trees, it's going to be one of these two, liquid adhesives. Now here's kind of what makes me choose one over the other. Glossy accents is what I like to use for glitter, because I feel that it's thinner. I think that it's a little bit stickier, if you will, so the glitter can kind of attach itself to everything, whereas Collage medium is a little thicker, and I prefer to use it with mica flakes, because mica flakes, okay, this tree is stuck together, mica flakes are thicker, right? So that's just a preference. Could you use one for both? Absolutely, but that's just why I have two different ones. So you can see here in the trees, right? These are all different blended ones, kind of like I did before, but you can see most of my trees, I don't necessarily need to squish them this much, but you'll see that you can start just leaving them in that paper towel to dry to get all sorts of cool different shapes. Look at this color. Beautiful. This is done with an oxide, right? So this is using ice spruce, stain, and oxide. So you can see inside the core of that tree, it's much deeper because that's where the stain is, but the outside looks so wintry because that's using oxide. Now the big difference, I'll just show you from trees that don't have any sparkle. Okay, this would be a stain. You can see the saturation. This would be an oxide, right? So you can see that it almost looks like paint. So different. So it's very cool to see the comparison between using a translucent stain or using that oxide that's just going to give you a much more muted tone. Nice. And you've seen, can you use them together? Absolutely. But if you don't want any really vibrant trees, maybe your style is more shabby vintage, I would stick with oxide, right? Because oxide is going to just give you that touch of color, but also almost like that softness, that wintry haze. And you can see that, you know, this one just has glitter, right? So rock candy is just nice. See how it just sits right on the tip of those little needles of the bottle brush? You can do a combination of glitter and mica, just depends on how sparkly you want to go. And what I like about mica, you just kind of, and I'll show you how to do it, you just kind of get what you get and you don't throw a fit. But I love that it just really accents all the trees. And I like different colors, right? I like to play. Now, if you're a true vintage person, you might be familiar, especially if you do the little houses, you might be familiar with something called a putz tree. And that's kind of the trees that went with the houses. And these trees often have this really crazy flocked snow, right? It's very chunky, very random. These are not. These are actually idea-ology. And what you can use to mimic this, and I think Stacy did this way, way long ago. I'm not sure. This is what I use. I like to work with grit paste, the opaque one, right? I think Stacy used this as well. The opaque grit paste is going to be white. It's gesso based and it's very gritty. And so what I do is after my trees are done and completely dry, so I add this after it's done. So I would do my glittering, mica, all that stuff, let them dry overnight, and then go in with the grit paste on your finger and just touch it. But look at that cool, realistic, chunky, nuggety white snow. It does not wick up the ink like that, right? Because these have a chance to dry overnight. Why it does that, I don't know. Maybe there's just not enough, because if you were to do this like on paper or something, we know that the grit paste would start pulling the color. It doesn't on the trees. So if you like that look, if you like that, you know, almost flocked look, but definitely vintage, like look at that. Oh my gosh, this is evergreen bough, right? These colors, holy moly, sweet mother of mica. That's beautiful right there. Look at that. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about like how we can do all of this stuff. Isn't it nice just to have a little station? So uninked trees, ready trees, stuff that you need to get the trees going. Okay, here's what we can do. Let's take a thing. I should have got a piece of cardstock. Will you give me just a couple pieces of just white cardstock, please, Mario? Thanks. I didn't think of glitter catchers, right? It's weird when you go from like working to I don't know, kind of switching places. So let's say you want to work with either one of these, or maybe you don't have a squeezy collage medium, but you have a jar. You can do that just the same. I would just say that if you're going to do this, just scoop some of it out. So I'll probably do some glossy accents and collage medium. Thanks. Okay, just piece of paper, thanks. Okay, so when I go to use some adhesive, I'm just gonna work right here. I don't want to take this totally out of camera shot. I've just got my tray over here because I like to work on here if I'm going to do glue, and I've got my sparkly stuff here, right? So there we go. We kind of have a setup station. If I'm going to use some collage medium and I only have this, you want to make sure that you have a clean finger, and you're going to scoop some out and put it on your mat, right? Don't double dip into your jar, because when we start adding the glue, just going to take this and wipe this off at the top. When we start adding glue, you will get some ink transfer on your fingers. So even if you're doing glossy accents, and even if your trees are dry, so just kind of keep that in mind. I'll take this, I'll take a couple that have already dried, and then I'll even work on some of the ones that we have. So first, let's just talk about glitter and how simple that can be. So I'll take some glossy accents, same thing. This glossy accents, I'll be honest, I'm just doing this for show, but I have a bottle that I call just the sacrificial bottle of glossy accents, which essentially I only use for, see, I just have a little piece of wire, right? Keep a piece of wire handy. I have a sacrificial bottle of glossy accents that I just use for glittering. So I've cut the nib right here at the base, so it's completely flat, and then it never clogs, because I always just squeeze out a blob of it. But I'm just gonna give it that thunk so it pulls that back into the nib. So if you're using glossy accents as a glossy accent, you might want to have one bottle that you keep for the nib. But if you're using a lot of glitter, just take one, save yourself the grief, chop off that nib, and then you have it for some glue. All right, I'm going to do a small tree. Let's do this little guy. We're going to do this with some clear rock candy, right? Simple, simple. So just take your finger, dab that in. Your finger is going to be the best, because if you try to do this with a brush, we don't want to paint it, right? Because it's a bottle brush tree. So if you rub your fingers on it, it's going to act like a splatter brush, and you're going to get glue everywhere. You're going to get it in your face. If you're wearing glasses, it's going to be all over your glasses. So you just really want to tap that on there. And so again, that's why I'm not a huge glove wearer, but when it comes to stuff that is tactile, something that's sticky, I'm all over the gloves. I don't mind getting inky, but I don't like getting all covered in something where I can't feel my fingers anymore. And then I'm just going to take the glitter and just pour it on, right? You could use a glitter duster if you wanted to use a glitter duster for this. Not really a fan for this one because it doesn't put as much glitter on there, but if you didn't want a lot of glitter, you'd use a glitter duster. But there you go. Look at that. Now, I will say that the glue right now is what's making this look, let's just say, snowier or whiter, but it will dry. Let me find one. I'll just add one over here. Here we go. It will dry like that. See? And that's simply because you have a concentration of glitter, and that's what's making it look really nice and snowy. It's that simple. So just dabbing it on, you can see, look at that. It's got such great sparkle, and it will even become more sparkly as it dries. That's the beauty of that. So it's just done. You can just kind of set it aside and off you go. Okay? Really simple. Really, really simple. Okay, let me just pour this back. If you have a piece of cardstock, it just makes it easy. Okay, so let's talk about mica. Mica is a little different. We'll even do some that have both. If you're going to put mica on a tree, you need to kind of work that on there almost. So let's do this one. I kind of like this. It is kind of like a Whoville tree. These are wired, so yeah, you could totally make, right, that fun Whoville tree. I just love it. I love that they're just wired all the way through. Really great. This one, because it's mica, I'm going to use Collage medium. So same thing. Now, again, the mica flakes, it has just more surface area. So could you do one section at a time? You could, but honestly, if you just kind of go for it, you're going to be fine, right? But I kind of like to mess up its hair, if you will. Like I go against the grain, so I'm like pushing some on it, but I'm also pushing some underneath it. It's kind of a weird way to describe it, right? And I don't know if you can see on the media mat, it's just getting a little bit of color transfer. It's not a lot, but it is enough to just kind of annoy me if this was in my jar of collage medium. I always like to put some on the top, especially if you have that little bit of wire you want to cover. Okay, then we're going to go over here, take our mica flakes. Now these are a little different. You have to, it's almost like, I don't know, buttering corn on the cob, right? Just put a little bit there, press it down. Put a little bit on. Because the mica flakes, we need to make contact, right? So it is going to get all over your gloves. You'll be able to wipe it off, but we want to make contact with that. I don't want to go in and actually squeeze it because I like that the mica flakes just kind of, I don't know, they just move around, if you will. But don't be afraid to just push that on there. And also don't be afraid to go back and add more if you don't like the way that looks. Now, I also don't mind having a blend. So I do have kind of a party mix jar that I keep in the studio that has, because you can see some of that mica. See that little green, right? So essentially when I'm using this on trees, I just keep a party mix of glitter, mica, the thing that's mixed for my trees, because I don't care if it has a little green hue. Again, that's why you have a tree station, because then I would know every year that this is my jar of mica and glitter for trees. So I don't care if I scoop it back into a jar, right? Then when I'm done, I'm just going to take the tip of that tree, push some in there, and then we're going to let this dry. But this is what we have. So pretty. And don't worry about those little random things. See, they'll normally just fall off even after it dries. That just happened to work on camera. But just let it do its thing. Let it dry. Drying time on this, you're probably only looking at 10 or 15 minutes, right? Really, really simple. But it's so much fun to get into this kind of making of the trees. Now, do they have to stand up? No, you can lay them flat. I normally like to work on a cafeteria tray, and I'll lay them down on a cafeteria tray because everything stays on there, which is nice. So you can do that too. All right. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I pick them up at, you can pick them up at the thrift store, whatever. Mine happens to be kind of old school melamine. Brown, I don't know where they came from, but a tray is nice. And yeah, if you have one of those, yeah. And I think like any kind, it could be a cookie sheet, anything that has a little, there you go. Thanks, Mario. You're welcome. There you go. There. See, I just throw it on there because I like that little lip. So I just throw my stuff on there because then I can pour whatever falls off back into the jar. So, all right. Thanks, Mario. I'm just going to add that. So you can see collage medium just gives me more open time, but it's also, see, it just goes on thicker. Different glues for different things. Now, can you roll it? Yeah, if you've got stuff down here, you can roll it, or you can just use what's here. You don't have to always go back into the fresh jar. It's just a nice mix to have a little mica and some glitter, because you just get the best of both worlds. But it is just about picking it up, kind of pushing that on a little bit, and there you go. Look at that. See, I love that little mix. And these little guys, again, don't worry about them. Like, don't try to pick them off right now because, well, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let me just wash off my hands. So even with gloves, right, you can still clean your gloves with a baby wipe, just like if you had just your fingers, because then at least your gloves will be clean if you're going to work on other things. All right, cool. So far, so good. Easy, right, guys? Super easy. No, I think I'm just going to clean this up real quick. Okay. I'll take these off for now. Clean up my mat. So the glue, right? You could use all that glue, but the great thing about a media mat, especially when you work on that, see the collage media, it's just a dry paper towel. Comes off. Glossy accents. Same thing, just like a dry erase board. So using your media mat properly, meaning, choose the non-stick part for the sticky stuff and use your glass for the dry stuff, because then it's just going to come off. So it just makes it really, really simple. All right. So these are uncontaminated at this point. That's from my party mix. But yeah, just look for simple things. It's the little tools, I think, that just make all the difference. I'll try to see if I can save that piece of cardstock and use it again. All right, so we know that there's sparkles on here, and that is what I do. And for those that have tried it, you know, when you know, you know. When you know that the right tools make all the difference. So I've got a piece of cardstock that I use, and I stick it right under the media mat, because you know the media mat has those little feet on the bottom, those little risers that stay there, and if you tuck it under there, you can pick that up. If you have a media mat, now that I mentioned those little risers, listen, when you're using your media mat, wherever you work, if you're working on some type of table or whatever, and you're done using it, don't drag it off the table. Pick it up. The same way you put it down, pick it up, because those feet, although they're stuck on there, they're not fused to the glass, right? You could stick them back on, you could glue them back on with collage medium, but if you find that those little feet are falling off, it's just because you're probably just dragging the mat off when you shouldn't. So just kind of remember that, because that's happened to me before. Okay, so when we have trees, what do you do with trees? Well, I love to do a lot of things with trees, but here's one of my favorites, right? I'm just a vintage lover. Look at these guys. I have an entire, I have a problem. I really do. I love to use trees and old cars. You're going to see that there's going to be trees used on a lot of other things, but you can do so many cute things. So like you could have a little station wagon and just tie that on. So this is why you want those trees kind of smashed. Another cool thing is you can twist off the base, right? So if you have a base on a tree, you simply just hold onto the tree and twist this off. There you go. Keep twisting. It'll come off because it's just kind of twisted on there. There you go. Leave that little wire, and then you can go in and add a little stick, right? Mario just cuts a stick, drill a little tiny hole, but it's very cute to tie those onto the top. Remember this one from Salvaged patina? This was in the flat lay. Oh, I knew that color was going to be perfect, and I love just having that long tree. But can you see how that tree is all smashed? Now you know how it's all smashed, right? Just by letting it dry that way. They're just really fun. These are so cool. These are great gifts. They're very fun. You can pick up old cars at, I don't know, on eBay, on Etsy, flea markets, whatever. This was in the flat lay for maybe, I don't think it was Rustic Wilderness. I don't know, it might have been. I just love this old car. Very cute. So that's a smaller tree, right? Shorter tree. You can have a truck. So take a look at this truck where I just kind of have it coming out of the bed of the truck and do that. How do you attach them? Well, you can do a lot of things. I personally hot glue them. The reason I do is because hot glue won't really stick to metal. Meaning after Christmas, I can literally peel this off the car and the hot glue stays on the tree. So that's my glue of choice when it comes to the cars, because, you know, I may want to change it out. But if you don't want to, hot glue is also going to be, it's going to be as permanent as it is until you rip it off. This is just some jute that I wrapped around. This one's cute, right? Look at this little truck. I just stuck those trees in. So these are just actually sitting in there. See, they just kind of stick together. But cute ideas for seeing things. And if you're not into vintage, you can often find a lot of like reproduction cars this time of year, or trucks at any of even the home decor stores, right? The whole idea of like the red truck for Christmas, you can fill it with baubles, but it's a great way that you can add a tree to just about anything. And I think the quirkier, the better. Super fun. Yeah, so this one has windows. So I just glued this on the top. This one didn't, so I put it right through there. So it just depends. I was not going to bust out the windows of this old car for the tree. I thought gluing it on top was just as fun. So anyway, and this is just kind of a wood slice from TJ Maxx, but yeah, it's cute. Yeah, did a little putty at first to keep them from, right? I always give you that tip. You can see the little poster putty right there? That's what kept these trucks from rolling off initially. But now I hand them to Mario and anything goes. There you go. I got it? Yeah. If you hear anything, it's because he just took that tray one-handed. So if you hear anything, he's got it. That's right. Okay, so from trees, we move on to other things that we can alter, because there's a lot of fun things that we can alter. And we're going to go into some tried and true, but there's also several new. So I think that, you know, if you guys have been following for years, you might be rolling your eyes. You're like, oh, rerun. Well, yes and no. You know, there's always something a little different. But the next one is just going to be about baubles, right? Baubles and bubbles. And I'm going to share techniques for both. So both of these SKUs are seasonal SKUs, meaning they come out once a year and they are not part of the everyday line. It is what it is. And if you know, you know. There's people that just stock up on these because they do have great uses all year long. So Baubles, these come out at Christmas. These are pearl. They're plastic, but they have no holes. That's what makes them so cool, because nothing I hate more than just, even though you can buy pearl beads at the craft store, they have a hole that you have to hide if you go to use it, right? So you can't just set them in a dish, or you can't do any of that unless you don't mind seeing the hole. Bubbles, also plastic, but they are completely clear. These came out for Halloween, and these are wonderful because they are so clear. They're perfect for bubbles. They'd be great for spring. I mean, I just love them. I love the look of them. But again, seasonal. So when they're gone for the season. Happy that we bring them back. What I like about these, though, and I'm just going to bring my tray into shot for just a second, because it's just easier than picking stuff up, is that you can create these vintage looking mercury glass ornaments out of baubles, right? And the reason we do baubles is because that pearl finish is what makes this look like mercury glass. Now you can do some other cool things. I'll show you a make that Paula did where she transformed the bubbles into something, but this is what gives it that kind of mercury glass look, is that pearl finish. These would just look kind of like maybe candy colored glass. So it is important that we've got the pearl. Very, very simple to do. The thing that I love, well, that it's just me, is that I love that Ranger does certain colors now in the 2 ounce. Because if you do this every year, you know that it doesn't take a ton of ink, but it takes a pretty good amount of ink when you're doing volume of these. And that little bottle, I always felt like, oh my gosh, I just put like half the bottle in here. But you don't. But it is nice that we have 2 ounce. So I've got my little 2 ounce station set up. Here's some that are already out of the package, so I don't have to worry about blowing up. I use these cups year after year. I reuse them. These are oatmeal cups from Starbucks that I had that we just kind of wiped out and reuse. And you can use them for all different things. The point is, whatever you're going to use for this, it needs to be something reusable, disposable. Don't want to do it in like your finest glassware or coffee mug, because alcohol ink is going to stain that, okay? So let's just do, oh gosh, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll do a pink one. I won't do all the colors, but we'll just show you the idea. I have an idea to try a color, so that's why I have a new cup, right? Well, I'm going to do 2 new colors. So I'll have 2 cups. Well, one will be old. Okay. So all we're going to do is take some and just throw some in. How many? Whatever you want. You want to do the whole package of a color, you knock the whole package in. It doesn't really matter how many you do, as long as you have a space big enough to do them. Okay? Meaning, if you're going to put the entire package in, make sure that the entire thing can cover the bottom of the surface. If they're piled up, it's just going to make coloring them a little bit challenging. Okay? Okay. Zip that up. So again, these are baubles. They are pearl. So what we're going to do is take the color. This will happen to be gumball. Take the alcohol ink. So this is alcohol ink, really important. I just tip the cup so they kind of go into one spot. Squirt a little bit of that ink on there, and then just start moving this around. Now, realistically, when I'm doing this, but just so you guys can see how easy that is, but I just cover it with something, right? Paper towel, piece of wax paper. Then I can go crazy, right? This, I don't have to worry about, like, see, because that would have hit my hand. Colors would have flown everywhere, but I just like that because it's, look at that. So beautiful. Doesn't take much, but you want to have enough ink in there. If you do a few drops at one time, I just find that a bit annoying. And the reason I find that a bit annoying is because alcohol reacts with alcohol. So if you continue to add multiple layers of the same color, it tends to build up, and to me, it just doesn't give you that really pretty look. Now, speaking of pretty look, before I move on to the next color, see, sometimes I'm so programmed to do it one way that I don't even think sometimes to describe it and say how to do it. So you see this bauble? You see how this one really looks like vintage, like from my grandmother's tree, versus this? It is the same color. But what I like to do, because I like to go that last little vintage step, okay? If you don't like to do the vintage step, you're done, right? I'll show you what we're gonna do when we're done. Okay, actually, I'll be done with these. Let's do that. So what I'm gonna do is I'll take usually that same paper towel that I used as a cover. I'll flip this over, right? Tap the bottom so they're not stuck, and I let them dry here. Could you let them dry in the cup? You could, But see the alcohol ink, it has resin in there. Sometimes they stick to it. They'll still come out, but then you're left with a weird mark. At least on the paper towel, they don't tend to stick to the paper towel as much. You could also do wax paper, right? If you have any type of deli paper or deli sheets, right? This is really inexpensive. This is also great to use as a top and to let the baubles dry on that. I just find the paper towel has a little, I don't know what it is, a little tooth, so they don't move everywhere. You're just gonna let them dry. Again, 10 minutes or so, whatever it is. Okay, I'm gonna hand these off to Mario as well. There you go. I got it. There you go. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Okay, let's do another color. Let's do a couple. These are colors that I cannot wait to do. Moss and Monsoon. So Monsoon I'll probably put in this tealy cup, green. Can you reuse a cup? You can, right? You don't have to have one dedicated color, but try to stick within the color family. Moss is that really cool green I've just been dying to do. So again, tip that, a little bit of ink, take something to cover the top. And you can even work right on the media mat, but like, can you hear this? Listen. You see when you kind of get that swirl, you want them to move too. So you can get that swirl, but you also want them to roll around because they're just gonna take color a little different, right? Look at that. Ooh, pretty, pretty color, pretty color. Now, if you have a little bit of ink, see those little lines in there? I don't mind that. That's usually from not having enough ink, and so it's just dragging across the bottom. So could you do another layer? Yes, but we're gonna antique these, so I'm not gonna bother with another layer of moss. But if you're getting those lines, it just means you don't have enough ink in there. So just go in and add some more ink before this dries, and you shouldn't get a reaction. As long as you do this while the ink is wet, the ink should just kind of flow into the next one. Let's do a little bit of moss. You can see why just having that, see, makes all the difference. They are beautiful. Okay, there you go. There's a little Monsoon, nice. Do a little alcohol ink, perfect. Okay, then we're going to go in and do the magic. So this is Mushroom. You've seen it year after year. This is the color. It's just the magic, and I'm so happy. Truth is, when Ranger did these in 2 ounce, this was the one color that they did not do. Just because, I don't know why, because they just did these colors, okay? And after they came out, I was like, guys, there's no way we can just do this without Mushroom. And so I think Mushroom came out, maybe it was like a month later or something, but that's what I love about Ranger too. They listen. So here for Mushroom, we're gonna use it a little different, okay? We're not gonna totally soak it, just kind of put it in like maybe like Tabasco. See, like a couple little shots of that. And then this one, this is gonna be a little different. So you can kind of tell that my inking is just a bit more random, right? Because I don't wanna coat the entire bauble like I did before. I just want it to be random. So it's almost more of like a shake, a spin. It's just, I don't know, just a little random. But this is what you're gonna end up with. You can already see the imperfections in the color. You can see those kind of dark areas that are happening. We're gonna do the same thing with a little Monsoon, okay? Couple shakes. And you could do this, well, you can do this when it's wet or dry, honestly. It doesn't really matter. I prefer to do this when it's wet because I feel that the color kind of, I don't know, fuses it out a little bit. So this is why Mushroom in the 2 ounce is, well, it is life, honestly. Because you use it on metal, you use it on anything. If you look at any of the makers, they're using a little touch of Mushroom for everything. You know, I think Paula, anytime she talks about what she uses, you just by default, whether it's posted or not, by default is and Mushroom, because there's no doubt that she used it in something, right? I think she kind of got us all on that, right? I think Zoe and Stacy will agree with that too. Okay, so those go there. I'm gonna just try to do a quick flip. Okay, there we go. Again, tapping the bottom. Whew, look at those. See, the cups are perfectly good. Stack them up, save them. But look at those colors. They're so good. Oh my gosh, Monsoon and Moss, holy moly. See, like for the blue, and Monsoon is really interesting because it is kind of a gray blue, but it's so vintage, and oh my gosh, Moss, I can't even stand it. I want to roll around in it. But you see how like dingy these are? The dingy is from the Mushroom, really. The dinginess really comes from that little bit of Mushroom that just touches the surface. It's It's not totally dry yet, but dry enough. See, it didn't come off. Yeah, they're just beautiful. So what can you do with them? Gosh, you can put them on trees. You'll see in the makes. You can put them in a bowl. You can do anything you want with those. That's why they're just fun to make. And you can make them in beautiful pastels. If you want a pastel, you can go in and add just a little bit of blending solution to it, or isopropyl. In fact, Mario, I'm so glad you're here. Can you, in my spinner right there, that little mini mister with the red dot right there, it's like, yep. You just grab it, thank you. Just show you that. So another cool thing, if you're really into vintage, I keep the red dot, I have a mini mister that is filled with isopropyl alcohol, not blending solution, but isopropyl, 91% or higher. And the cool thing about that is that once your baubles, and you can do this at any time, but you can take that mister of iso and you're going to keep your distance. So my hand is kind of out of camera range and I'm just going to mist, right? Can you kind of see that coming into camera? All that's doing is just dropping a little bit of iso on there, and it's going to react that and kind of create these little, I don't know, I don't want to say chips, but it will remove some of the ink and it creates such a cool look. Let me pick this up. This is totally not dry because I just did it, but I don't know if you can see it. It just kind of makes the ink look a little bit more, there you go, a little pitted. So you don't want, there, see those little dots? That's just from the isopropyl hitting it. So it doesn't rinse them. It just makes them a little bit of, I don't know, it's just cool. I mean, Kathleen, I wish you could release it, but there's no point, Kathleen, because you could just buy these and you have enough for the year. So there's only so many products that a company will do. I know everybody wishes that everything was all the time, but if you know, then at least you know to get it. Right, you buy what you like. The same way I know from See's Candy, Trader Joe's, anything. If you like it, I think the best part is knowing. The worst part would be not knowing and then saying, oh, I had no idea. I wish I would have known. So knowing that, then you can just stock up, because I know that many makers stock up for the year. That's why they sell out really quick. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about bubbles. So why bubbles? Well, bubbles were really brought out for Halloween. And the reason they were brought out for Halloween is because I just wanted something that was kind of bubbly and creepy. And we launched a cauldron Halloween. This was one of the ones that I shared. Again, this would go into a make, but this is for demo purposes only, where I show you that, you know, put in some tiny lights. These are the green tiny lights. Alcohol inked these. So these are done exactly the same way the baubles are, except they're bubbles. They're clear. There you go. Yeah, see, Simon says they have them in stock. Many people have them in stock throughout the season. It's just about knowing to stock up for them. So the bubbles, you alcohol ink them just the same. And then I put them in this cauldron. You don't have to light them up, but you can see the difference that these are completely translucent when you ink them. They have a completely different look than what the baubles have. The baubles have more of that mercury glass pearlescent. This is just glass, but they're beautiful and they're fun. And that's really why I did them for Halloween. But of course, once we had them, then the creative juices started going to say, well, wait a minute, there's some things that we've done before with baubles that we could completely do with these. And that, of course, was creating snowballs, right? Snowballs are really cool. I actually have some in the tray. So look at those. Look at these little guys right here, right? So look at these cool little snowballs. The snowballs are simply just the bubbles from Halloween that you can make these beautiful little, well, I just love them. They're wonderful little snowballs. I do a lot of, this is all rock candy. This is rock candy on confections, rock candy on the deer. We'll get into that, but that's what's cool about the bubbles. So cool. They did. They really did. So here's how simple it is to do. Now again, you're going to go back and you're going to glove it up. So very important for this, at least one glove. You don't need glove on two hands. If you're not bothered by tactile, then listen, you do you, okay? All right, the snowballs are so cool. So here's what you're going to need for that. So going back to what I said before about what I like to use for what, I like to use what adhesive for glitter? Glossy accents, right? That's my favorite. Can you use Collage Medium? You could, but Collage Medium is going to be a matte finish. And that's going to make these less sparkly, if you will, because this is matte. Glossy accents is glossy, translucent. So that's really why I like to use glossy accents with glitter, because it just keeps everything shiny and sparkly. The other thing you're going to want is you are going to want some type of paintbrush, right? Just a little paintbrush, right? I like to work with just different little paintbrushes. I'm not a paintbrush snob, to be honest. I know some people have their whole thing. I use the ones from the alcohol ink set mostly because it gives me kind of a slop mop brush. I love this little flat brush, and it gives me a tiny detailed brush. Right? I think the only other brush I have is something really, really detailed when we do salvage stuff, but it's an alcohol set, and then it's also that mini mister for the ISO. But any brush is gonna work. Don't think like you have to get a, magical paintbrush. Same rules apply. We're gonna take our glossy accents, and we're gonna squeeze a pile of it. You could see why having a bottle of glossy accents with the top chopped off is going to be, I'll use a little bit more because I might do a few. It's just gonna be your jam. All right. So what I've done is in here, I've just put some rock candy, right? Same clear glitter, put that in. So why rock candy? People ask that a lot because they're like, oh, it's just clear glitter. I'll just get clear glitter. You can. You do what works for you. But what's beautiful about rock candy, if you look at it, it has no iridescence. Many of the clear glitters out there have some type of iridescent, a holographic. It's either going to be green or blue or yellow. I just like that this is completely clear. The other thing is this has 5 different particle sizes. So I kind of moved it away from the bottom so you can see that it's got bigger pieces, medium pieces, all the way down to tiny dusting pieces. And to me, that's what gives it its sugary look. If you just have one size of clear glitter, that's fine, but it is just going to look like that one size. Sometimes it just looks too flaky, where something looks more like a chia pet than something sparkly. That's why we did rock candy. And we've done this for years because, well, it's just a great glitter to use year round, okay? So here's what we're going to do with these. Again, I have some in a, I actually thought about this time. How many times have I tried to open this on camera and it just goes everywhere? So put them in a little Ziploc, okay? So all we're going to do is take one. I'll start with a big one. Hold it in your hand, take a paintbrush, and you're just going to start painting this. And the reason I like to do gloves is you can see that I'm actually using my gloves also to slide this around to coat it with glue. So I don't have to worry. It's pretty much going to cover something. I don't care if I cover the whole thing. In fact, if I miss a couple spots, that's even better. Then drop it in here, and you're just going to roll it around in there, right? No little shakety shake, just kind of roll it around. If you have any spot that has no glossy accents, it's going to leave a clear area, which is perfect. So I'm just going to leave that to dry for a second and just go to the next one. Now, if you make several, like I did, your glove is going to start getting sticky, and it's pretty funny because then, you'll go to pick up one and you'll pick up, like if you have a dish of them, you'll pick up like 4 or 5 at a time. You can do 4 or 5. Just the glove, see, just allows me to kind of move that, and you want to just keep working. Glossy accents dries really, really quick. So if you're going to do several, maybe you have just a couple of them in there, that's fine. If you can hold on to them, again, but see that little flat brush just allows me to, also move them. That's the other part that I like about this little brush. Glossy accents. And glossy accents, because it's thick, that's the other nice thing. It can kind of build up some of that texture as well. Drop that in, and again, just roll it around. So once you're done, this cleans with water. Okay? If you're in your making mode, I say this all the time. Let me just wipe off my glove with a little baby wipe. If you're ever in making mode, whether you're using a paintbrush or a glue brush or a collage brush, take that brush, fold it up into a baby wipe or a damp paper towel, and leave it. Leave it in your space until you're done making, and then go and clean your brush. Because if you need to use glue again, glossy accents, it's better to have a brush that is not soaked in water. This will just keep that glue from drying on the bristles, because a lot of times if you do a lot of collage work or that and you use a wet brush, that wet brush is going to dilute your paint on contact. It's going to dilute your collage medium, all sorts of different things, right? So that's what I like to do. But I will put this in a cup of water just to rinse it, just so I have some other brushes just for the demo. Again, same baby wipe, just kind of clean that up. Done with the glove. Because the glossy accents on that snowball is pretty much dry. So let's just take a look at it. Look at that. So do you see what I mean by having some of those little areas that don't have any? It just makes it more realistic, I think. I just think it's really cool. Look at all those. Isn't that wonderful? And you can make candy out of these, meaning if you maybe alcohol inked these first and then did the coating, they could look like little candies. Absolutely, right? The glossy accents, it's not super reactive to alcohol ink, but it does react with alcohol ink. So just know that if you're going to ink these first and do the glossy accent thing, Just make sure that you kind of paint it pretty quick because it's going to react with some of that ink, but that's okay. It's going to make it just absolutely perfect. So now you got some snowballs. So what can you do? Well, you could, yeah, they would make beautiful gumdrops. You could pile them up. If I'm going to glue them onto a project, again, I would go back to glossy accents as my glue because it's going to dry shiny and you won't see anything. And you could pile them up. You'll see that Paula did a great make. I'll show you near the end how she did the make. But what was inspiring to me is this. When I was like this, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if I can light up some snowballs. And the answer is, of course you can. Look at that. Look at that beautiful glowy thing. I love the fact that it just creates such a wonderful little illumination. Wonderful, right? So good. You don't have to light them up, but how cute is that going to be? So this is just a little wash bucket. Yeah, found that in the miniature section. So you can shop in the miniature section of things to find other things, right? Not everything has to be in our universe. You have to look outside the box. Miniatures are a great way that you can find different vessels or things to put things in. And often inspiration. Do I think we need a little bucket? You bet I do, but it's just really cute. And I did a little distressed crayon on the outside, a little mushroom alcohol ink, right? See, you can see right there. It just starts out really boring, but that's just a little bit of mushroom dabbed on there, some white crayon just to make it look a little more galvanized wintry. But how great is that? So this would have already been wired, right? This would have already been something in a box or in a vignette that you could do. But I love just the look of these snowballs. They're all glued in with glossy accents. Really simple, right? Cute, cute. Yeah, you could tint these any color you wanted to. If you wanted these to be more blue than white, absolutely. You could alcohol ink the lights as well, or you can tint the snowballs. Anyway, just something fun to share with you of what you can do with bubbles for the holidays as well as baubles. And again, if you didn't stock up at Halloween, you definitely want, I don't know if anybody still has bubbles in stock because they were Halloween, but you'll want them because they're fun to do. Fun to have also. So another thing to keep in mind, and I'm not going to demo this. I have demos on the blog if you want to check this out. But the same way that we went in and inked the baubles, you can go in and ink all of your other stuff, right? Your glitter and your mica flakes can also be inked with alcohol ink, right? So the same way I did the baubles, you're going to get a disposable cup. You're going to pour in some of your mica or your glitter. You're going to add some alcohol ink. You're going to stir it up, mix it, and then let it dry on a paper towel. But look at those tinted mica flakes. Isn't that beautiful? Little pink, right? Look at this green. This is awesome. So you could put these on a tree if you didn't want to do white. They just add another color. Mica is also great for a little shakety shake, right? If you're doing a holiday card and you want to shakety shake without using any kind of sequins or beads, look at that color. That's stunning. Beautiful. Beautiful. But same thing with glitter, right? You want to have and this glitter is going to be different because remember, it's not going to be mylar glitter. It's going to be a translucent colored glitter. So you know, like if you put red glitter on something that's mylar based, it's just that aluminum red color. But if you look at that, I love this one too. So rock candy and mica, yep, and you can get these little jars from Ranger. They sell these. They're just storage jars. I think Simon has them as well, probably scrapbook.com. Just look for, they're just distressed storage jars. Because you can put a lot of things, embellishments, all sorts, and they fit in the infamous crayon tin, which is now just called distressed storage tin because it houses everything from jars. And the jars will go lay down or they will store this way, but then that requires labeling. Really? Nah, but they can, either one. And then I have the seasonal glitters in there as well, which we'll touch base on in a bit. Okay, so far so good, guys. Just ideas, that's all it is. Just one little idea and inspiration after the next. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is ways of altering other things, right? So far we've talked about trees and how we can alter those, or how we can alter baubles or bubbles. There's a lot of great things that we can do to alter them. But what else can we alter? Well, metal is a very cool thing to alter, right? And there's a lot of different metal elements as well. And that could be everything from, well, you saw that snowball bucket that I had, but there's a lot of other things. I love these new word plaques. I love these, and I love these seals. Now I'm going to say this, and Mario and I already had the ongoing conversation, but I'm doing it anyway because I just believe, well, yeah, I just do me.
You're doing it anyway. Is that a shock?
It's not a shock. But I just believe, I've said before, that as a maker, every time that I do a live, when I talk about stuff going away or stuff that's not there, just like earlier with the baubles, it's like, well, you have to do it, you need to do it. But it's just not how it is. I don't get to make those decisions. I don't control the creative universe. I'm just a designer. I'm just an idea guy. And it's really up to the company as to what they think is the sellability of product. And everything comes to an end. So at the end of this season, I already know some things that are not coming back next year, right? Many of this stuff is coming back, but I know for a fact which stuff is not coming back, just so you know. So these guys, one of my favorites, Tin Tops, well, they just didn't fly this year. This was its first year out of the gate, and usually we get a couple years out of something, but this one, I think they're great. I know that a lot of people use them as props. Susie did this as a book cover. They're just very cool because they're just tin tops. They're neat, but these will not be coming back next year. So when they're gone, they're out of here. They're done. The other mini flare, I thought these were adorable. I thought that we would take some of our flare for both Halloween and Christmas and do mini versions of it. They're so cute for gift cards and tags. Denied. Neither one of these are coming back next year. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And these, which makes me kind of sad. I love these. These were kind of like the whole wax seal idea. I loved a lot of the quotes, especially for Christmas, right? A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices. I love these. These aren't coming back for Halloween or Christmas. So they're done. Bye-bye. You're killing me with that. And there's some other things. I'll talk about that as we get to it. But just specific, the metal, I'll just show you like what you can do. And maybe it's because when people see them at shelf level, you look and you're like, oh, I can't really see it. But there's a trick to make metal completely different, visible. One being a distress crayon. So let me grab a crayon. Now you can do this with acrylic paint. I've done this with acrylic paint for forever, but I really like a white crayon, picket fence for metal. It just makes it much easier. But if you don't have a crayon, you can certainly do this with white acrylic paint, but crayon's just a little thicker. So what you're going to do is just take your metal, take the distress crayon. I love this new font. I'm happy that these guys are coming back because I love them. We even have some everyday ones next year just because they're so cool. So I just scribble it on there. It's almost like a cheese grater, right? But crayon is kind of smudgeable. So take your finger and really work that in. Use the pad of your finger. I say the pad, I would normally say the fat of my finger, but the pad of my finger is going to heat up that crayon. See how it just kind of melts? And look at how it just put it all the way around those letters. Oh, so good. And just let it dry. And it's dry. It will be dry to the touch. So when you pick it up and use it, it's not going to come off. These are water reactive. So the only way this is going to come off is if you get it wet or if you lick it. And we don't lick our art. So once this dries, it's going to feel tacky right now because crayon does that. But once it dries, it will be on there. Absolutely cool. How simple is that, right? So simple. So next, yeah, I don't try to figure out why something doesn't sell. I just move on because there's many other ideas in the queue, right? And the way I see it from a company is if it's not going to work for them, I shouldn't fight that. So here I've just taken that quote seal crayon. Again, take my finger. I'm just smushing it around. See, I didn't have any up there in the its. So just reapply. Simple. All right. Yeah, I think every time I bring it up, Mario's like, oh, then the whole chat turns to debate and conversation, and we're going to start a campaign, and we're going to no, and no. We just move on. They tell me, listen, if I didn't agree with something, I would say that I would be able to at least ask, but I'm really good. If something doesn't work for them, I shouldn't make that happen. Oh, let's do the little W. So I don't use tons of crayon to begin with because I like to just push in whatever's needed, and then I'll just wipe that off. Now look at the difference of that, right? How cool is that compared to that? And people go, well, why didn't you make them that way? Well, because we just didn't. Because you could put any color in there. You could put red or green, but that white crayon, to me, I just think that changes it. I really, really do. I mean, it would be nice if they could be in the package, but that's what this live is all about. It's about showing that what looks one way, like Baubles, right? So many people look at these on a shelf and they're like, no, I'm not into pearls. And then you see that and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Or you look at bubbles, you're like, why do I want a bunch of clear little balls? Well, because they could be so many different things. That's what this live is about. It's about looking at sometimes what's in the packaging and what can be done with it. And quite honestly, that's what I love about idea-ology. I don't like things overdone, over-finished, right? In fact, Drippy Candles is pretty much one of the first that we actually added a finish to. We only do that at Halloween, but I thought it needed it in order to bring out the detail. But this is nice as a maker, that you have the ability to just use a crayon and completely alter the metal. But there are other ways that we can alter that, right? That's good. Don't fight City Hall. Funny. All right. So the other thing that I wanted to try is I was like, well, what if I really wanted to change the look of metal? What if I really wanted to alter these guys? Could I do paint? Yes. Could I do crayon? Yes. You'll see from the live that many makers actually did that. You've seen some different colors. I know that Paula did a red lantern. I know Vicky did, but I wanted to just see what if. You know me. That's how it is. So let me find it. Let's see. I've got it. There we go. I got it right here. So the what if for me was, what if these are the tree stands, idea-ology tree stands. They are so charming. Little metal tree stands. They are designed that you can take your woodland tree, remove the base. I even cut some of that tree just to and then I pushed some of it around, and I just covered this with hot glue just to kind of make that stick. But yeah, look at that. It's so cute in a tree stand. And you could do this for the large and the medium tree. The lantern, of course, lights up. The beauty of the idea-ology lantern, it can light up. But if you put paint on it, paint's cool because it's going to give it a vintage look. If you do alcohol ink is good because it's going to do color. The downside with paint is that when you paint it, it goes from a metallic finish to a flat finish because the distress paint is a matte finish paint. But I love glazing things. And if you've seen any of the previous lives, you know how much I love to glaze metal. So I had an idea to turn this into this. And I just love, cool. This to me is like, well, it's vintage. It's pure vintage love, right? Because it looks like an old enameled tree stand. It's really quite cool. I think it just alters the whole thing, and I love that it still has the finish. I love that kind of orange peel pitted texture to it. The lanterns came out at Halloween. Then they also came out for Christmas because I knew we wanted to have them for both seasons. I love the lantern. It's made out of metal, but I wanted to make my lantern go from just a silver lantern to a Christmas lantern. And same thing, the lantern, you can see, it's that pitted enamel. Right, Vicky? It's like those camping lanterns. So cool that has just that really worn, chippy finish. Now, if you just did paint, it would be completely matte. But I love the fact that it has that nice, robust finish. So I thought I would just kind of share with you how I've done it. I've done it before, but I just wanted to share how it's done on these guys. Really quite simple. So the thing to keep in mind, if you're going to do embossing, the last time I demoed this, we just took regular metal and we used the Distress embossing glaze. Okay. Now we use embossing glaze because the embossing glaze is translucent. We can see through it. It's not an opaque embossing powder. It is a translucent embossing powder. I don't know if I have my swatch. It doesn't matter. I've shared it many times. But I needed something translucent. The other thing, though, is when I looked at the colors that are available, because the embossing glaze is not available in every color in the Distress line, I knew that fired brick, in my opinion, is just a little dirtier than what I wanted for this. I wanted something that would have that nice traditional red color. So that's what got me thinking, like, well, hold on, you know what you know about glaze on paper, so let's just apply it to metal, okay? The difference on metal is that my base coat, because normally I would use this over ink, right? I would use this over Distress ink or oxide. You can't put ink or oxide on metal, it doesn't dry. So I needed to see how this would look on paint. And as every maker should do, you create a swatch. And that's all I did. I took my Distress paints. You can see I just stuck a drop on my finger. And I even made that sound when I did it. But I used Barn Door paint, Fired Brick paint, Festive Berries paint, Candied Apple paint. Let it dry. And then I went in and glazed. These are all the same color of glaze. It's all Fired Brick. It's the only red that's in the line. But you can see that depending on your base color, because it is translucent, it completely changes the intensity or the color of the red. This one was a little orange. This, as I mentioned, Fired Brick. Well, it's fired. It's a little dirty, right? To me, Festive Berries was a little blue, so it kind of made this almost purpley. And then Candied Apple. That was that deep, rich, Candied Apple fire engine red that I was going for. But this swatch helped me visibly see what it was going to look like. And same thing with the green, right? So my green, I have some options. I have cracked pistachio, peeled paint, rustic wilderness. Well, I know this is really dark, and I know that peeled paint has quite a bit of yellow, but what would I like? Well, here you can see it over bundled sage. Oh, I almost went with this one. I probably should have. I have regrets because I really love this. This is like avocado green, right? Avocado appliance green. I'll probably have to do another one in that. But instead I went with peeled paint on peeled paint because I kind of liked that dark. But truth be told, I think I kind of ended up matching more of this because of that metal, right? This was on white cardstock. Maybe the metal had something to do with it because I don't think it's, oh, I guess it is more that color. Whatever, I digress. I'll probably do another one. But mowed lawn, right? Totally made that glaze a much brighter green. And rustic wilderness, because, well, it's dark. There's the paint, there's the glaze, but you can see when they come together, ooh, really, really dark. But that's kind of cool if you didn't have rustic wilderness glaze to know that you could do that. But this swatch was very, very helpful, and it only took a few minutes of my time, but now I have it. So now when I'm going to use it, it's like, okay, this is what I wanted to do. Because once you do it, you can't take it off. The thing about this technique is once you've glazed the metal, it is part of this metal. Like you would have to probably take a grinder or some really wiry brush to get this off. It's not going to come off. And that is what I wanted to share with you, is how you do it. Because historically we think of embossing glaze, we think of embossing ink. That is not what we're going to do. We don't want to use embossing ink on metal because embossing ink is glycerin based. Embossing ink is for paper, something where that ink could eventually evaporate and soak into. If you used embossing ink, whether it's Versamark or anything, on metal, yeah, it's going to get the powder to stick. And yes, the powder will melt, but then as soon as you touch it with your fingernail, it's coming off because that barrier between the metal and the glaze, that glycerin based embossing ink will never soak in to metal. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First thing, we're just going to paint. I'm not going to go into much with painting. I'm just going to show you on this one just what I did. Just taking a little bit of distress paint. This happens to be some candied apple. Flip this over, a little drop. You don't need much because I'm not going to do the whole thing. Okay, I like the flip top. Then we'll take a brush. Excellent. So here's the, I'll just use this one because it's here. Thanks, Mario. I had it, but he'll end up probably washing it again. So here's what I just do. When I go in and paint, I'm very, again, haphazard. I'm just working on a piece of wax paper. You could work on your craft mat. It's totally fine, but I just don't have to do a lot of cleaning. But when I paint, I'm just kind of slopping the paint. Let's get that to focus. There you go. On there. I'm not worrying about covering everything perfectly because I want it to look vintage. Now, if you want it to be perfect, well, then do it perfect. But I just prefer to not have paint built up in the design. So now I'm going back to with my paintbrush and just moving some of that around. Okay. So I would essentially paint the entire thing and let it dry. I would paint the side, whatever part you want, but I would even leave some of that exposed. But you notice that I scooped out the paint from that area, those recesses. So if you get too much paint in that design, it's just going to take forever to dry. You don't need much. Okay. But remember, distress paint, the cool thing about distress paint is this medium in the distress line is permanent on every surface. Distress paint is permanent on metal, it's permanent on wood, on glass, on plastic, on fabric, completely washable. Whether you used it full strength or watercolored with it, it is permanent. That's what makes it such a great medium for things, and a little goes a long way. We even have techniques of reacting it with water, but I gotta stick to the plan. So next I'm going to take a little paper towel, just because I want something a little extra vintage. I'm just going to dab off some excess. You don't have to do this. Hey, Mar, would you mind grabbing me a little jar with water?
Sure.
Because I'm going to keep going through paintbrushes, I think. So next I want this to dry. Normally I would let this dry on its own, but I'm going to go in with a heat tool and I'm going to dry this. Anytime you use heat on metal, it's going to get hot. Remember that, okay? But I just want to dry it just so you can see what paint looks like on metal. I'm actually just going to put a little bit more on there because I think I may have taken a little too much off.
That was pretty funny.
With my paper towel.
You didn't remember that it was hot and picked up the lantern.
Oh my gosh. Well,
The wire.
yeah, I just grabbed the little, I was embossing the lantern and I just picked up the little wire. It's also metal, duh. And woo, zippity doo, it was hot. Good thing that doesn't make, huh?
Oh,
Yeah.
across the room.
Woo, it was a zinger. Because you think it's going to cool really quick and it doesn't.
So it was hot.
It was hot. Okay. All right. Thanks, Mario. Get that off. Okay, move this off to the side. I'll use my paper towel because that metal is going to be hot. Okay, just some things that you can do. There's many ways that you can quickly cool this down. One, the glass is going to cool this down. Two, another thing that I do, I don't even know if I want to share all these things because it's probably just so ridiculous. It's such a hack, but like I never want to wait. So I'll just normally spray some water on the mat and just let it sit in the water because it seems to cool it down. I don't actually spray it with water, although I'm sure you could, right? But just sitting in that water is just going to cool it down. You could probably have a baby wipe or something that you can sit it on. Okay, so this is dry, but you can see that it's painted, right? It's still a little wet right there. That's where you get the shine, but you can see that the finish is not at all like this finish, right? Because the paint is not going to dry with an enamelly finish. It's a matte coat paint, but you might like this. And if you like this, leave it. If you want to sand it, you could go in with steel wool. You can go in with a paper towel. You can go in with a little emery board. You can scuff this all you want, right? So you don't always have to glaze this. This is completely permanent on there, but you would be able to, I'm going to see if I can scratch this off. Thought I had a little nail file here. There we go, right? So you could go in if you wanted to. I'll just show you that. See? And we can scuff off some of that paint. All right? Just so nice just if you have like a little emery board. All right, but let's say we want to glaze. If we want to glaze, I'm just going to clean my brush real quick because I don't want to have that red paint on it. Here's how we're going to do it. And again, this is all just part of the demo. Normally I would paint the entire thing. I just want to preface that, but for the sake of the demo, you don't need to see everything painted from start to finish, I don't think. Okay, so what we're going to use to stick our powder to our surface is glue. We're going to use a glue that we would normally use for metal, and that would be Collage medium. So Collage medium is what we would normally use to glue our metal. Let me just take some of this. And you could use either just the jar, you can use the squeezy, whatever. Just gonna take a little bit of that. Just gonna scoop some out with my paintbrush. You don't need a lot, okay? And put the lid on. But if you don't have the jar and you have the squeezy, I don't know where my squeezy one is. You could just use it. Where'd my Collage medium go? No idea. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to have my embossing glaze ready. I'll take this, I'm just going to brush off excess because you don't need a lot, and you're simply going to paint this over that metal. And you don't need a heavy coat, but Collage medium dries fairly quick, so as you're working, just keep putting that Collage medium around wherever you want it to be. Okay, excellent. Then once you're done, you would have the entire thing Collage mediumed. After it's painted, then you're going to take your glaze and you're going to generously cover that, tap that off. Okay, there you go. And then once we have that, you can either leave it like that, or you can take some of this off with your finger if you want it to be a little bit worn. All I do is I normally just touch the top because I like see some of that little metal exposed. It'll fill in a little bit, but that's it. So I'll let that dry, take my powder, put it back in the jar. So here's the thing. Do you have to wait for this to completely dry? No, you do not. So once you're done with the glaze, you can either go ahead and heat emboss it, or you could walk away. You could emboss this another time. I'm just one of those that if I'm going to do it, I'm kind of in the zone. So next we're going to emboss this. You guys see that? Oh, cool. All right. So embossing, I'm going to work on non-stick. Let me get rid of this for right now. I might go back to it. And we're going to use an embossing gun. All right. We got this, our big one. This is going to be totally different than when we were drying the paint. I mean, this is going to heat this thing up. So just so you can see, this is what it looks like in powder form. And then I'm going to heat emboss it. So you want to get pretty close. The weird thing about embossing metal is it seems as though nothing's happening, right? You'll look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not working. This is not working. It's not working. The thing is, unlike paper, when you emboss on metal, you have to get the entire metal surface that hot. But once it heats up, you'll see that the powder just starts melting, melting, melting. If you have too much Collage medium, it'll start to kind of bubble and blister. Well, that's okay. To me, it just adds to the nostalgic charm. But if you don't like the bubbling and blister, then that just means let your collage medium dry for probably a good 10 or 15 minutes. All right, just making sure it's all done, looking at the light. All right, cool, it's done. Because once it's good, it is good. It is hot, yes. So we'll kind of go into the same, back to the glass, put that there, heat stable. It is going to be hot, but I think, hey, I'm just looking right here. Right next to me is just a little pair of pliers. I'll just grab that. That wouldn't be bad, right? As long as I don't then touch with my fingers. So there we go. Let's get that focused. How cool is that? Look at that glazed metal. And it's done because the collage medium is what bonded the glaze to the painted surface. And then when you heat it, it's done. It's a done deal, okay? So let me just show you one last thing that I did to mine. Maybe you want to do that, maybe you don't. But it's good to know all the tips and tricks. Let me just make sure this is probably blazing hot. Oh yeah, it's freaking hot. Okay, here, let me just do this. I'm just going to spray it with water. That'll cool it down because the embossing glaze is completely waterproof. Okay, nice. All right, the water cooled it off. So what you're going to notice is that when we glaze it, your paint and your glaze, although it's on there and it's beautiful and you still see the detail, to me, I felt that it kind of lost some of the detail. Can you kind of see the difference in how on this one you can see the little outlines around the stands? Again, this might be so insignificant to you, but like here, those little lines that are in the design, I felt that the red on red, it just wasn't visible. And I wanted to bring that back. Same thing on the lantern, right? I really wanted to kind of make it look like it was very rusty. And you've seen this. This is the same technique that we did on paper with that kind of rusted enamel. And that is, we're going to go into a crayon. We're going to take a little walnut stain crayon. Let me get a brush here. I've got it somewhere. The thing is like when I set up, I put stuff where I probably should have chosen not to put it because now I can't find it. No, it's just going to be my brown brush. My word, Holtz, what did you do with it? You would think, here it is. It's in the container for this demo. That's where it is. See? Pitfalls of organization. There's even the walnut stain. So you can do this with brown, white, whatever you want. I'm just going to scribble some of the crayon on there. You guys can see that. You don't need to do much. I have a dedicated blending brush just for brown crayon because I like to do this all the time. I'll take a little bit of water on my mat. I don't want too much because these are going to be reactive with water. And that brush, I'll just show you if I can do it in the air. It's just going to work that crayon into, if I want that brush to be a little firmer, it's just going to work that into those little areas, right? You're going to see this technique in play quite a bit today. So see how now everything became, well, kind of brown, kind of dull. Well, the crayon is now in there, but this is still water reactive. So I'll just take a damp part of the paper towel. This has a little bit of water on there, and I'm just going to wipe that away, and look, there's my glaze. So it's just taking that crayon off of the top. Look at that. So now we have the color, but see the deboss line? See how it's got that little bit of brown? Maybe you didn't want brown. Maybe you'd want this to be silver, right? Use the metallic distress crayon, or maybe you wanted it white. But that's a great way to bring detail back to something that you've glazed, because the crayon then will sit in there just like it did on this, right? It's no different. Like once you kind of learn about texture and putting crayons, the same rules apply. It's just over a color, right? So that would be really cool. So whether you wanted to do, again, white, anything, you could put that in. So if you wanted silver, you would just use the metallic distress crayon. You would just do that, right? Because a crayon's a crayon. There's no, the distress crayon's a distress crayon. So not, the color doesn't make it special other than the Mica crayons that we have. So pretty cool. Just wanted to share how we can take something that often you see in a package and you can transform it. So not only a tree stand and a lantern, this could be anything. This could be charms that you had. Maybe you bought older stuff. Maybe you have brass charms that you don't like. Paint them, glaze them, and now they become something so different and so nostalgic. I mean, I think just the idea of now seeing that tree with that red stand, I mean, come on. And I love the shine. You don't have to do the shine. you could just do the paint, but that is pure vintage to me by having that little bit of shine on there. So I wanted to share that. I love that so much. Now, the lanterns, if you're not familiar with these little guys, they're so cute. They are designed to work with tiny lights. So the tiny lights, you pretty much want to cut off most of the light strand. You only want to leave yourself a few bulbs. You can twist it around. I would say no more than 3 together, right? But then you could just twist it. If you look at the bottom, it's completely hollow up there, and there's a little notch out of the back for the wire. But you essentially make yourself kind of a light bulb where it could just fit up there. There's a stopper in the acrylic so it can't go any further. And then your wire comes out of the back. So this could sit somewhere. This could be however you wanted this to be. And then of course your tiny light would light up your lantern. Now the other cool thing, if you're doing these for Christmas, you could use your Christmas tree lights to light up your lantern, right? You don't have to have the light bulb completely, I'll just show you. You don't have to have it up in the top, right? If you have light here, there you go. I just did it so the light is not, see, it's actually underneath it. Can you guys see that? So I didn't put it up inside. So if you have a Christmas light that just fits in there, it's still going to act as a light for your lantern. See how that works? It's just the way the acrylic is. It gives you the illusion that it's glowing versus having the light up inside. You guys see the difference? So don't try to shove your Christmas light up in there because I doubt that they're going to be that tiny, but there's plenty of room in there to do that if you're going to hang those on a tree, and you can have little illuminated lanterns. Cute, right? So clever to just create a little ornament. You could have a tag. I mean, there's fun things you can do with idea-ology. That's the whole thing. It's not always about the vignette box, although I'm a fan of the vignette box. I love making little scenes. There's so many components to idea-ology that you can just use one as a decor piece, as an accent piece. Heck, you could even sit this on a tea light, right? If you wanted just that tea light flicker. There's many ways that you can incorporate it, and that's what today's demo is all about. It's just showing you ways that you can alter something and turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. Something that is very unique to you as the maker. Where they're like, oh, you made that? You're like, yeah, I mean, you did. You turned it from just a regular packaged finish to something very, very cool. But to do that on Christmas trees, just absolutely charming, right? Because there's plenty of space. Kept that in mind when we were designing those. Okay. So far so good. Just moving on from one idea to the next. We're just going to keep changing and keep trying to transform as many things. So here's the next one. We'll take this one. We're going to get into, well, actually some pretty cool things. So often when we look at things, especially embellishments, they're just kind of like, whatever. Oh, thanks. Nice, Zoe. Nice. All right. So one of the things is like we'll look at a product and we see it for what it is. I think many makers are guilty of that. I'd like to say that I'm guilty of that, but I'm not. I'm not that guy. I'm the opposite side. I can see so many possibilities for anything, and I'm grateful for that. But I know that not everybody does. Sometimes people see it, they see the packaging, they see when it comes out, and they're done, right? So these urns come out at Halloween. And many people look at that, and I mean, there's been cool, creepy crypt things. Tammy B's had like dead flowers coming out of them, busted off. They're awesome for the creep, but they're also very cool for the holidays because the shape and detail and design, incredibly charming. But we designed these to be creepy. So they have a bit of a weird yellowy translucent resin. They've got some kind of green, mossy looking. That's just what they're designed because they're Halloween. We wanted them to look creepy. Could you use them like this at Christmas? Yeah, but I don't think many people's decor is kind of like this. But what you could do is you could change it from this into something like this, right? Totally change it into something really pretty, really wintry, and wonderful that could either go on a table, right? As a centerpiece. It could just go next to a place card holder. It could sit on your mantle. It's a great way also to give height to the woodland trees, but it changes that. You see the difference? And it's very easy to do. So let me just show you. And we're going to alter a lot of different things in idea-ology with very similar products, just some different colors. You get the idea. So I wanted this to look like stone or concrete. So what better paint to choose than, well, pumice stone. You could do pumice stone, you could do hickory smoke, you could do whatever color that you want to work with. And truth be told, I don't even know what colors are still available or discontinued. I don't follow that news brief, but I know in the addicts group, Zoe has printed a list. I don't know if Ranger has printed a list of what colors are unavailable. But anyway, this is what I used, pumice stone. And I started simply by painting with a coat of pumice stone. That's all I did. So it started out as this color and changed to this color. And not bad. Just, again, dry brushing it. Dry brushing it meaning I didn't totally mop it on, but, well, I guess not dry brushing. I take that back. I just painted it normal. But I didn't put on 3 or 4 coats. I didn't care if there was still some exposed, so you can see little bits of green, but I painted it. All right? So already, I like it. It's a nice, cool stone look to it. Could we go in with crayon? Yes. Could we do like what we did before where we smudge in a color? Yes. But for this, I wanted to go with something that was a little bit more, I don't know if the light is cooperating, but a little bit more gilded, right? So I don't know if you guys can see that. The light is cooperating. You see how gilded that is right there? That beautiful metallic that's on there. So this just has a wonderful metallic look. I didn't want to go in with foil, although you could. I didn't want to go in with glitter, although you could. What I wanted to do is just take something that would be quick and simple. And the easiest thing for that are the alcohol alloys. Now again, you could do the small bottle. The difference between an alloy and a mixative is the kind of metallic. The alloys contain a leafing metallic, not a metallic powder. It's just completely different. And so these give a beautiful sheen. It's designed to work with alcohol inks in a background. Normally with alloy, you want to use blending solution on a background, but because we're only using a little bit of it as an accent, we don't need to worry about blending solution, okay? Because we're just going to essentially dry brush it. There's only a couple colors of the alloy that come in this big bottle, but they happen to be my favorite, so I'm good with that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to dry brush alloy on there. Now, because there are some cool raised areas to this, you could go in with a paintbrush. I'm not really good with a paintbrush when I'm trying to do something fussy and detailed, so here is my trick. I'll just take a piece of felt that I would normally use from the alcohol ink. I'll take an idea-ology hinge clip. I will clip that piece of felt right there, and that becomes my applicator. So now I can shake the alloy because we want to shake it up. And where do you see? Because Paula actually did bubbles with alloy to make them into metallic ornaments. Amazing. But that's going to be near the end, the live one. I'll show you that. So you can see already just how cool that alloy is. It's like liquid metal. And you're just going to pour some of this right along that fold. Not much, see, just a little bit. A little goes a long way for this particular one. And then just using the hinge clip, now we can go in and just kind of dry brush or swipe and see how it's only hitting those top areas. Pretty simple. I could never do that with a paintbrush. I would be way heavy-handed all over the place. So I can go along the edges. I can swipe that. So see how I can just get that gold. And I'm just using this like a little paintbrush. But it's nice because the felt is designed to keep alcohol inks wet, so it's not soaking into a paintbrush. I can go around the top if I want. Now, could you still go back with crayon? Yes. And I'm going to talk about that on some other items where we can take paint and alloy and crayon and really, you know, create the creative casserole. But see, you could just add as much as you want, and that's it. It's dry, but it has such a beautiful metallic touch to it. Finished. Simple, simple. So that is what's great. Now, did I grunge mine up a bit? Well, you can tell exactly. Of course I did. I did just what I did on the tree stands. Just went in with a little walnut, rubbed that in with the brush, and then wiped it off. And that's what made this deeper color than this. But the technique is the same. Really simple, but I like the idea. I mean, these are beautiful. You could tie something around it, tie a name card. This could be an ornament, right? You can have a string coming off of that, and that could just hang. It's just nice to take a look at something that you almost see and you're like, oh yeah, it's totally not getting my creep on. I'm not creating, you know, a cemetery or something, and see possibility of what it could be, right? It could be something, and even beyond Christmas, this would be beautiful if you colored it and put, you know, flowers in it or whatever. It just makes something really nice with some of the things that you have. And maybe many of you have had some of this stuff in your stash for years and you've just never used it. So hopefully that inspires you to do just that. Okay? All right. Moving on. Are we doing okay, Mario?
You're doing great.
Yeah? It's a lot of ideas, huh?
I'm just loving all the tips and how you did the metal was huge.
Fun.
Yeah.
The more you alter, the better. Okay. So next we will talk about these guys, the decorative deer. Okay. Also a SKU that is not coming back. These have been in the line, gosh, I'm going to say maybe 5 years.
Bye-bye.
They're fun, but yeah, they're not coming back. Maybe because people had so many. I mean, there's 12. I didn't think that was that many, but maybe you didn't use them. But I will say that what's cool about the decorative deer is they really work well with the paper village and all of that because they're scaled. But yes, so they're gone. Not coming back next year. But they're here. So they came out this year, so they're everywhere. But no, someone just said that explains why I can't find deer anywhere. Not true, Catherine. They came out this year, so they're there. But when they sell through this year, they're just not coming back. But I know many places have the deer. If they don't, they probably just didn't get them this time. This was one of my favorites, and like I told you at the beginning, I'm still going to talk about it. This is circa 2015. One of my favorites. I have.
Simon has the deer.
See, Simon has the deer. I thought most people do because it came out this year. Just because it's not coming back doesn't mean it didn't come out this year. That's all I'm trying to tell you. But these guys. These came out in 2015. I loved them. Most people hated them. They were like a one-year wonder. I have a case of them in my garage because, well, I like them. They are these cool little trophy antlers. They're plastic. I mean, I understand they're kind of junky, but they can be turned cool. And that's what I want to show you about things like this. Sometimes when we see stuff that's metal, it looks pretty. Sometimes when we see things like the urn, we can appreciate that they're pretty. But sometimes when we see just kind of white plastic, it just doesn't look good, but it can. So the first thing to know about the decorative deer is that they are made out of a resin. Okay, so but it's still a plasticky resin. It's not like a plaster resin, but it is a resin. When you go to work on these, you can leave them as is. If you want to make them sparkly, well, look at that. That's just glossy accents and rock candy. That's it, right? It is nice. The reason they were designed this way, can you kind of see how they look really, well, just kind of skinny, kind of thinned out. And some people look at them and they're like, oh gosh, like their body is kind of indented. It was really like that by design. Their snout is really skinny by design because I designed these to be glittered. Because see, when you glitter, it just kind of fluffs them up a little bit. It fills in all the indentation, but it doesn't make them look like a balloon. So by themselves, I admit, you can kind of see all those little divots a little bit more, but once you glitter them, they just kind of look pretty legit. So this is rock candy. Now, these are the ones that Mario did. He did a great job on them. I love them. So this is using the new Distress. This is tinsel. Look at those. Look how beautiful those are. But you see what I mean? So now the deer looks right with the glitter on it. So this is the Distress glitter. It's just tinsel. Let's see, it's in. Okay. There we go. That took a while. You want to grab me garland? Thanks. Sure. So this one, that's a seasonal. This one has like, it's almost a little antique silver, kind of platinum, right? Really fine outdoor activity. This stuff goes everywhere, right, Mario?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So that's an outdoor activity. The next one that he did, look at this one. This one's garland. So this is kind of an antique gold. Look at that. Beautiful. Look at that. I love, see, and that's it. It's just the glitter. There's no alcohol ink, no crayon, no nothing. But that really is why we did this glitter. And I will say that this glitter, this is not coming back next year. We are doing some seasonal next year, but we're not doing, there's no plans for these glitters to come back. But they were nice. I liked them. But maybe just people think that glitter is glitter. But I love the fact that this is antique silver and this is an antique gold. Beautiful glitter. Again, glossy accents, paint it on, put the glitter on, let them dry. And they're quite stunning, really. They're super nice. But it's a simple way that we can change, well, how the deer look. Now I'm going to have
Swiffer?
Yeah, it's like I have to Swiffer my hand. There you go. Perfect. Okay. The other way that we could do stuff, though, and that's what I'm going to share with you, is how we can really transform them into something, well, what I consider quite stunning, where we really make them look like they're made out of metal instead of plastic. It's pretty simple. There are a couple of tricks, just in my opinion, to give it this really nice look, right, where it just has that beautiful metallic finish. That's what I'm going to share with you, okay? So, here we go. Move this off. Not bad. Dusting off that glitter. Okay. It's weird. Okay. So what we're going to use is we're going to work with distress paint. Again, see, this is like ode to distress paint. Who knew that I'd be using so much paint? But a lot of this, you kind of want distress paint, okay? So this one is going to be brush pewter. Now, depending on the metallic color you want to go with, I happen to be going with silver, so I'm going to use brush pewter. Just going to give this a little shake. Take my, again, wax paper. It's beautiful, isn't it? So because these are resin, I don't recommend trying any kind of heat tool, embossing, glaze thing like I did on metal, because it will melt this. So, you know, you don't want to go there. So that's why I wanted to like figure out a way to really make it look kind of metallic without trying to do heat. Now, the first time I tried it, I'll be honest, because it took a while. The first time I'm like, well, hello, Captain Obvious. You just talked about how alloy is so amazing and beautiful and lustrous. So let's just put alloy on there. It's a bust, guys. It'll go on there. I painted a deer with alloy. It dried on there. And then as soon as this was dry, every time you touched it, the alloy came right off, because alloy needs to bond to something. It can't just go right onto plastic the same way it can't just go onto Yupo, right? If you don't use any blending solution, it'll just take that off. So then I'm like, okay, I'll mix alloy and blending solution. That didn't work either, because the blending solution and the alloy, it kind of separated on here. And I'm like, oh, I got to figure this out. So it's a two-parter. We will end up using alloy, but our first step is going to work with brush pewter, much like the urn that I share with you. See, as I said, as a maker, once you do one thing, there should be no reason why it wouldn't work on something else. So when I did this urn, I'm like, well, hold on. The alloy totally dried on this when it was paint. So maybe I need paint as my foundation for the deer. Okay, cool. Well, silver on silver is going to make silver, is it not? Of course. So that's what it's all about. So I'm just going to take a little bit of distress paint. We'll do that. And I'll get a paintbrush. All right. I see glitter. It's going to drive me crazy. Yep. There we go. I kind of see it sparkle, drives me crazy. All right, here we go. For this, don't judge my painting. I'm a slop mop kind of painter, right? If I can, I just like to use a big brush like this, and I'm a slop mop, meaning this is what I'm going to do. I just slop mop it on there. But you could do whatever you want. If you're one of those painters that, you know, you want to take a nice little delicate detail brush, go for it. But I just need this whole thing to be metallic. So I like the fact that, see, I can just slop it on there, because you want to have this paint everywhere. And I also prefer to kind of dab it on, because I feel that by doing that, you get better coverage. But again, you do you. Now, distress paint, even though it does dry permanent, sometimes, depending on how you apply it, you're going to need a couple of coats. But that's why I think like this slop mop effect works, because you'll see it provides pretty good coverage. The other thing to remember is distress paints are water reactive. So if you don't start with a dry paintbrush, your paints are not going to want to essentially go onto that surface. It's just going to go in and try to wash it around. So look at that. See? Simple and quick and covered. I'll probably do one more little layer because I want it to be pretty metallic. But different paintbrushes do different things. That's why I said that to me, it's just one drop. And distress paint dries really quick. But see, slop mop, just boom, boom, boom. Because I can just dab it in that big brush. See that kind of mop? See how it goes around everything too? See, sometimes I'll watch different people make, or I'll watch videos and the technique that they talk about. And this means no disrespect, but sometimes they talk about a technique and they talk it up so much that it seems complicated, that as a maker, I don't want to do this. And for the longest time, I didn't want to ever paint anything or add a finish to something, because I felt that I just wasn't as good as the professional people that kind of knew what they were doing. You know, where they're like, oh, you want a number whatever brush, and you want to, you know, prep the surface and all that. And I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm just not that. Everyone's different. I'm not that kind of maker. And that's why I just appreciate that I talk how I talk in these, and slop it on. Okay, so here's what we've got. Painted surface, pretty simple. This cleans with water, distress paint, water reactive. So all you have to do is clean with water. Now, how do you dry this? You can use a heat tool to dry paint. A heat tool, different than an embossing gun. This is the same temperature as my embossing gun. It is exactly the same temperature. If you tested it out, they go in at about between 3 and 340, but this diffuses heat. So instead of me focusing like I would be embossing, I'm just using it to dry paint. Do you have to dry it with a heat tool? No, you can let it air dry. But that's why I'm just a really big believer in having a heat tool and an embossing gun, because this just allows me to kind of move on to the next step. But if you have time, paint all your deer, and by the time you got done painting the set, you would be good. The other thing that I do, you'll notice that I was using my hands to move this. The reason I use my hands and not a pair of tweezers or something is because if my hands get hot, it's too hot, right? So it's a really good kind of reminder that if you're drawing something and you have your hand in there, if your hand is starting to burn, then you have too much heat going on down there. So you either pull the heat away, which you probably would, or you'd pull your hand away, or you pull both away. But that's just a good rule of thumb whenever you're drawing something, is if your hand is in the way and it starts to get hot, you need to give it a break so it has a chance to cool down. And that's how you keep from melting things that you want to dry with a heat gun, right? Pretty simple. So here's what we've got. So far, not bad. Good base coat, but it still doesn't have like, whoa, that, right? But it's close. That's where the alloy comes in. That, to me, is the beauty of this. I'm just going to shake this up. Let me get a fresh piece of felt because I really don't want to go back and use that. I don't want to use that brass one. Take another piece of felt out of my little garbage can. Take my clip. So could you go on with a paintbrush? You could, but remember the idea, even with the deer, for me, is to highlight some areas. I don't necessarily want to paint the whole thing, although you could, right? I agree. Don't burn the pork chops. You're right. They get in the way, but you know, I'm a tactile person. So alloy, this one happens to be sterling silver, right? It's a great name for that. Look at that. That's like just liquid molten good. All right, so we're taking the alloy and we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take that and just use it as a highlight. Look at how, I mean, just right away, you can see I just went in that one spot. Look at the difference. Oh my gosh, it's like adding some type of mirrored magic to it. And I just want to dab it in different areas. Look already, it's instantaneous. But I also think that by dabbing this on, you're still getting kind of the undertone, if you will, of the regular metallic. And I think that's what's giving, look at that, so much more reflection to this piece. So it's just a good tip. I'm going to go down there just using that little piece of felt. And for whatever reason, I'm not a chemist, but for whatever reason, the alloy sticks to the painted surface. Now, if you put too much alloy on there, if you're like, ooh, I like it, and you do that, you might get a little bit of fluming. Fluming is where the metallic, once it dries, kind of rubs off, but it won't all rub off like if you just did straight alloy like I did the first time, okay? So again, I like this look, but I like it a little bit more antiqued. Can you see the difference? It's very subtle, but this is beautiful, blingity bling ding, but this one, ooh, a little on the vintage side. We have the technology, people. Same steps. I mean, I did this for every single thing. And sometimes repetition is important for you to, I think, understand it, embrace it, experience it, and do it. So let me just take this, my trusty brush. So for this, I can take the crayon, and I could color on there, but there's really not much to color. So I'm just going to take, walnut stain is my jam. Everybody has a different favorite. I prefer walnut stain. It is my jam. So that's good. Will the original metallic mixative work the same way? Lynn, I mentioned that at the beginning about the difference between alloy and mixative. So yes, you can put a metallic mixative on there, but a mixative is not going to give you this reflection because an alloy and mixative are different metallics. Alloys are leafing, so this is almost, think of this as like liquid leafing. So that's what's giving you this leafed metal versus just metallic, which is what mixatives would be. So you could use mixatives, but just know that you're not going to get the same reflection. It still might be really beautiful, but it's really important to remember the difference between a mixative and an alloy. And the reason we brought out the alloy, just because I love the look of that leafing, you know, that's what you want. But yeah, give it a try. If that's what you have, try it. But it is important to know, so I don't just sit there and go, oh yeah, it's going to work the same. And then you're like, well, I don't see that like liquid gold Midas thing that he was talking about. No. So now I'm going over this with the brush a little bit. So just a little bit of water, because that's what we need to kind of get that crayon to go. And I'm just pouncing it on there. So you can see that it's already starting to get a little dingy. Perfect. We're going to let that dry for just a second. It doesn't take very long for it to dry. And then just a little bit. A lot of times I'll either use a baby wipe in my fingers or I'll use a paper towel, either one. But just a damp finger. Can you see how the crayon is coming off? Focus, there you go, on my thumb. So I'm just touching it in certain areas, and that's what's going to take that crayon off of the deer. But you could wipe it if you wanted to, but I wanted to just, there you go. Look at that. Wow, isn't that cool? Wow, wow, wow.
There you go.
There it is. That is like, it's shocking to me. It's shocking to take something that is really, I mean, I've seen these for years as a plastic. Oh, there's some fluming. There you go. You see that? See that little bit on my fingers? When the light hits it, you don't see much, but again, that's a little bit of that metallic coming off when I was doing the crayon and water, but it'll stop. It won't all keep coming off. So if you see that, don't freak your freak. It'll dry on there and you won't be bothered. But yeah, I love just, yeah, how something like that can just transform. All right. And just remember that technique, because the next one, I kind of connected the two. It was one thing after the next. You can kind of see, if you haven't kind of guessed from this whole, is kind of around, are there going to be new alloy colors? No, there will not. No new alloy colors, because to me, the alloy family is complete. We have everything from gold to silver to platinum to copper to bronze. So it's everything. And you can mix the alloys, so you can kind of mix that. Pearl colors, well, boy, you're asking, Tia. But yes, there are new pearl colors coming, actually. There are. But no, the alloys to me, because they are a true leafing metallic, right? There's only so many natural metals, and that's what we needed to try to keep in mind, because you can kind of tint them. We have been trying to work on a rose gold, but it's proven to be a little challenging. So I guess I don't want to never say never on the alloys, but it's proven to be challenging because we have to stick with regular metallics. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. You guys doing okay? Okay, repetition. But here we go. Because this, again, is sparking an idea based on the last technique that I did. Okay? So I looked at these. Now, these are Gothic frames. Again, another SKU that will not be coming back. Yeah, I guess as people didn't really find these as amazing as I did. But I admit, we're limited to color. And if antique brass wasn't your jam, you probably didn't see these anything but that. But these are excellent when you paint them bright red. This is a regular resin, so this is heat stable. It's not a plastic resin, so you could do the enamel glaze on this like we did on the metal. You could spray paint these. You can do all sorts of things. But what I wanted to do is show how we can take what I find to be just kind of a, I don't know, a boring brass color. Let me take them out of this little zip bag, right? That's how they come out of the package. They're pretty, they're pretty boring, but you can transform them. We can take that and we can change them into these, right? And to me, they just become something completely different than just what's in the package, right? You can actually see on this one, I tried to even do some step outs, the transformation of what you can do with something you see, and not just at the store. It's not just about, oh, go out and buy these frames. It's about, if you like the frame, yes, but if you have something, if you find a frame at the dollar store, if you found something that you look at and you're like, I hate the color, remember, as a maker, you have the potential to use those products and transform it into something else. The same way we've transformed the deer or the tree stand or the urn. These frames are no different. But what I wanted to do is like, what can you do with a frame? Well, the obvious, it's a frame, right? You could put it in a vignette. You could put it on something. That's what we did. These came out for Halloween. But you can also turn it into something, right? We can change these frames and we can actually make something out of them, like an ornament, right? So here is that same stag head, but just done with that technique I just showed you on the decorative deer, right? Now it became an ornament. A great thing that you can use on there is a little wood slice, a piece of backdrop, or maybe deer heads aren't your jam. Maybe you're into something like little bottle brush trees, right? Take a look at that. Look at that little delight. Taking a little bottle brush tree with a little redwood base, a little 25 from the clipping sticker book, and just turn this into an ornament. I love the little ledger paper in the back, right? This has like Paula all over it. Look at that tiny little mirrored star from Christmas. They're so tiny. Cute. So a great way that we can take Halloween frames into festive wonderment. Great. These could go on a gift. This could go around a wine bottle. This could go on a tree. It just proves that take something and see it for all it can be, not what you wish it was. So many times as makers, we're like, oh, I wish it was this. Oh, I wish it did this. I wish you that. You're a maker. Make it. Change it into something. See what you want to do. So the first thing would be to drill a hole. Now you're drilling into resin, so you're going to need something like a Dremel tool or something, and you want to drill a very small hole. We use kind of a craft bit. If you don't want to drill a hole, maybe you're going to want to maybe put ribbon around the frame. That's an option. If you don't want to do any drilling, maybe you can take a piece of, let me just grab it here. Hold on, it's in this drawer that I can't reach right now, so I'll get it. There we go. Maybe you're going to take a velvet trim and maybe you're going to wrap velvet through here, and that could become a hanger. So don't get so caught up in like, oh, I don't want to use a drill and a screw eye. There's many ways that you can turn this into some type of hanger, okay? But just taking a drill bit and using a mini screw eye, right? Really tiny. You're just going to take that and you're going to screw this in. Now, when you're using a screw eye into resin, even if you drill a hole, once you kind of reach resistance, you want to stop. You don't want to keep going unless you have a deep enough hole, because you could risk this breaking off. If you did, just drill a hole next to it and keep going. But you want that hole to be sideways. And there's nothing wrong with the hole, that screw eye sticking up above the frame, right? It's perfectly fine for that to happen, okay? These came from, oh, let's see, where's the little bucket that I just took everything out of? Here we go. This is the Vignette Hardware. So, but you can find little screw eyes anywhere. Vignette Hardware, also something going away. This is not retired day, guys, but this just had a lot of cool little hardware things. But anything to turn this into a hanger. So same rules are applying, right? Which means I took a frame, I painted it with a metallic. So if I was going to change a silver, then I used some brush pewter. If I wanted to change this into gold, I did nothing, it's already gold. But could you paint it again? Yes, but this was already painted. So, I mean, these are painted, but if you wanted to go in and use distress paint and you want to use tarnished brass, you could do that, okay? So, but because it's already gold, if that's your thing, just kind of, you can stick with it. But just for the sake of demoing, just so I can show you. So I went in with metallic paint, that's our first layer, right? Then I went in and did the crayon this time. So that's how I switched it from the deer. Remember the deer, the crayon was the last step, right? The urn, it was the last step. But this one, I wanted that to really stick out over the top. So that's what I'm going to share with you really quick, which is essentially taking some paint. Again, I won't do the whole thing, but you'll get the idea. So we'll take a little bit. Oh, maybe I won't even do that. I think I'll save the step from painting because this one is already done, but I will put some tarnished brass because I just like having a little different color. Tarnished brass is a funky brass. It's kind of, oh, I don't know. It's not really gold. It's not really brass. It's kind of greenish, but it's cool. So I'm just going to take my little, I'm going to just dip that in there. There we go. I'm going to just slop it on. There you go. Okay. Just because I like that darker look, to me this was still too gold, so I use tarnished brass, but you could use whatever. It doesn't have to be distress paint either. If you have some other kind of paint that you want to use what you have. Okay, so I'll just do half. Perfect. Throw that in. Done. Right. My flip top, there was not enough paint to flip top it off. Okay, let's dry it. Dry our paint. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I agree. Wendy, I totally agree about that hardware. Yeah, but this is the thing. While I'm drawing, I'll start rambling. The thing about idea-ology, and anyone that's been following idea-ology for years, you kind of know, it's the simple everyday things that don't seem to sell fast, right? Like jump rings and long fasteners and hardware, right? Stuff that you don't need it all the time. It's not like a pack of word keys where you're going to use a whole pack on a make. It's just hardware that when you need it, it's nice to have it. that's kind of the same thing. So, I mean, we're happy we had it because like these longer screws allow you to go through longer things and use any of the knobs that came in idea-ology, the same screw. In this pack, it's got like, there's two different kinds. These are little screw eyes that are closed, and this is the screw eye that has a little open end, like a hook. So if you put this in one end and this in the other thing, you can hook them together and unhook them. So they're open. And then these are my favorite. These are like a little hardware tack nail. I'm trying to get Advantis just to let me do these next year just by themselves, because I'm like, okay, I can give up screw eyes because I can buy those, you know, at the hardware store. I'll even give up the screws, but these guys, if you don't know about these are actually molded. So it seems silly, but we designed a nail. If you remember like old tack nails, like in old vintage crates, see how the nails are square? Do you guys see as I roll it? And each one is completely different, random flat head. And they're sharp little boogers, right? But these, I just wanted something that really looked like those vintage nails when you saw old crates or drawers put together. So these are part of that kit, and I just said, I'm like, please just let these come back, but time will tell. Okay, so let's go back to this, make sure our paint is dry. I'm just gonna use a paper towel just to make sure. Yep, it's dry. Okay, so that's our painted layer. You can see unpainted, painted. Next, what we're going to do, kind of following this, is on this particular one, the crayon. Why did I do it this way? Why didn't I just do that? Because I really wanted the top. See, I really wanted that to be blingity bling. So that's why I decided to do the alloy part on top of the crayon. But you could do it the other way if you wanted to. So I'll start with just a little walnut stain crayon. Again, just scribble it on there, kind of like a cheese grater. Take that brush. You can see why if you just have a dedicated brush for crayon, especially brown, it's just nice because it's so rigid that it pushes that pigment in those areas. That's what we want to do. We want to push that color in there. If you have any big chunks that aren't moving, remember you could just take a little bit of water. You can spray that. Just don't get the brush too wet because these are reactive. So if you have too much water, you're going to essentially be wiping this off. So we push that color in there. Right? So you can see the difference. So original, painted, now painted with crayon. You guys see how that's working? Okay, so now we want to remove some of that crayon because we want to gild. So we'll take a little bit of water, and you could use your finger or you can use a cloth, but just watch what's going to happen to the raised areas. Woo, already. So cool, right? Nice, kind of kept that in there. I want this to be a little bit darker. So the other fun thing, obviously, about using any kind of medium like a crayon is even if you put it on and you wipe some off, you can just go put it right back on. See how I just put more dark sludge in there? And I'm going to go back and wipe that off. There we go. So far, so good. But now it's like, to me, it's kind of still the same color, if you will. So let's take our little clip. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm right here by this wall because I can just grab a hinge clip out of the drawer. Because I don't know what I did with mine already. It's how it is. No difference. Hinge clip. I'm going to use that same piece of felt that had the alloy from before. Now we're going to gilded. Cool. My great-grandpa made nails from white oak and very other hard. I think nails are, but again, there's just stories like that just get lost at shelf level as well. You look and you're like, oh, it's just nails. I've got nails. Right. But when you look close and you see that they're square and they were actually a molded, tooled nail because I wanted something vintage, that's why they're so cool to like tack it in. And if you look at like Stacy's used them, Paula used it. Well, pretty much every maker's used them in some fashion, but many makers like have them sticking out so you can put string around them. They're just cool. So again, we went in with some alloy. This had to be shaken up, right? This one is gilded because we want to go with the gold, and we'll do this close so you guys can see. So you go from that. Look at that. You see that? Isn't that crazy? That leafing metallic, it's as if you did gold leaf or foil right over the top of that. And you can just put as much of that as you want on. I can even put some kind of along the edges. But look at that. See the difference? Wow. It's just so cool. Yep. And that's really how we transformed those frames. Now, I wanted to turn them into ornaments. right? And I thought, okay, that's great. But I've said it many, many times. I'm a maker, but I'm also one of those people that I don't like to spend a lot of time on things that don't matter. I'm not much of a template drawer. I'm not this. I'm just, if I can find a hack, I will. So I looked at these and it's like, all right, what do I want to do? Well, I'd like to back it with paper and some chipboard. Now, could you finish this? Yes. Could you put fabric? Could you put felt? Could you put 2 back to back? You could do 1,000,001 things. You do you. For me, I wanted to make it something that, yeah, maybe I would probably put something a little bit more finished or ink or something, but for the purposes of the demo, just to give you the idea of what I wanted to do, that's what I did. So what I use for backgrounds, because what you have to remember is backgrounds of something, it's all about scale. So if you went into the idea-ology backdrops, right, the actual pad of paper, let's go here. These are backdrops. They're big, right? The plaid is massive. If I put the plaid in that frame, I'm going to get like a bar of red because the scale of a backdrop is, well, that's why they're designed. They're designed to be a backdrop. So there's many things that you could use that you want to find. One of my favorites that we did this year, and these 100% Paula designed these. This is where I just kind of sat back and got to watch Paula and Chris just work through these, is creating, let me see, where did I put that? Oh, here it is. I kind of have, see again, we ran out of table space, right, Mario? Pocket cards, right? So pocket cards are double-sided cardstock. It's the same paper weight as backdrops, but these are just different cards. And there's many ideas. Again, you can check out the blog, but you can use them for card fronts. You can use them for gift tags. You can use them for so many things. And Paula really wanted them for like mini books or things because a lot of times makers just want to be quick with the make. So the great thing is that they have a little bit of a collage element, right? A little bit of tape. We love using digital tape, that old-fashioned kind of Scotch tape. So we take elements that we actually have, elements that could be backdrops or ephemera, and actually digitally layer these together. So the components are real vintage, but the effect, that's all magic. And then the back usually has some type of solid part of what is used somewhere on the front, right? So maybe it's music, and then it's music, right? Or maybe it is, oh, I don't know, like a little text, Christmas cake. So these provide really great, look at the scale of that, really great backgrounds for things, whether you wanted to do like a little floral background, right? Look how charming that would be. Or maybe you wanted something collagey, right? Maybe you wanted to put that in there and you're done. Right? Maybe you're just going to add a little mirrored star and zippity-doo, you're finished, right? So you could do a lot of different things with these papers. Now, you could use them as is, but they're paper. So what I did is just found thin chipboard. You can find really thin weight chipboard. You can see it's not super thick. I got, I'm sure many people, they sell different thick board now, but any kind of thicker board. Could you stick this to the craft heavy stock? Yes. If you didn't have chipboard as an option and you had craft, that's still going to provide some rigidity. So I probably just found, where do we get ours? I don't know. It's just sheets of thin. So what I did is took the paper, right? Took my paper, took my chipboard, cut this the same size-ish, 2x3, and I added Xyron to my chipboard. Why? Because as a maker, I want options. I want options here. So if I ran these through, I'm already committed. So from a prep perspective, if I'm going to make a bunch of these, I'm going to cut my chipboard pieces, I'm going to Xyron them, and then when I'm ready and I'm like, ooh, yeah, okay, I want to use this one, then I'll peel this off to reveal sticky.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I'll stick this down.
Oh, so smart.
And now I'm done because I can make the decision on the fly. Okay? Could you glue it? Yes, but you have to wait for glue to dry. But yes, you could use collage medium, decoupage, glue stick, whatever you wanted to do, that's fine. Now I need to master Polyba. Yeah, I need to as well, Kathy. Okay, so then it was like, all right, what do I want to do about the frames? Well, I don't want to go in and cut these out. So what have I got? I don't know. I'm a maker. Oh, that's right. I have dies. And one of the cool things are stacked tiles. I've done these in many, many shapes. Sadly, many of these are already being retired from Sizzix. But what I love about stacked tiles is the fact that they are just repeats of a shape, smaller ones. And they're squares, triangles, circles, ovals, rectangles. I wonder if there's going to be a stacked tile that's pretty much the same size as this frame. Well, everybody has some type of nested die set. It doesn't have to be this one. Maybe you do, but check your nested dies. take what you're going to do, flip it over and be like, okay, there we go, perfect. It's going to be bigger than the back, so I have some glue room. Okay, that's going to work. So I'll take that die. And I had the same thing for the rectangle. And then the question, but wait a minute, will this cut through chipboard? Yes, if it's thin enough chipboard, you bet it will. And so you could just position this however you want. Now, even if this was going to go into my frame, I don't care that this is going to be off the edge because it's clearly going to be hidden by that frame. So don't get caught up in your head that, wait a minute, I want the 25 centered, that you are going to go off the edge. That's okay. As long as it's going to fit in the frame, you gave yourself a lot of real estate back here. So if part of it's missing, it's still going to be covered by the frame. Does that make sense? So sometimes just stay out of your head, because you can get caught up in your head and that's never a good thing. So you could just take whatever machine you have, but we're all about compartmental making. So I was doing all my little chopping with my little mini guillotine, right? From Tonic, I was taking this. Yes, I would tape this, but I'm not going to for the sake of the demo because I'm just not. But there's enough Xyron exposed. That'll be good. All right, let's see how this works. Chances are it's going to move, but that's all right. I'm going to be fine. Just going to put it in the Sidekick. Run this through. Do. Take that, pop it out, pop it out. And now we have a die cut piece. You could use whatever glue. I just use Collage Medium, and you're applying Collage Medium to your frame and you're going to glue this. So again, if you didn't like that weird egg, you could cut another one that was perfect and do felt or whatever, but I just don't want you to get caught up in the shape of it. But that is the nice thing about looking at your dies. Even if you don't have this set, this set was not designed for these frames, but if you have any kind of nested shape, think about that next time you have to cut a circle or cut a square or cut a template. That's why I wanted to do a set of multiple small sizes, because if I needed to do several of these, I don't have to worry about one die. These sets, you get 5 each of that set. So if I'm in ornament mode, you kind of heard throughout this entire series, compartmental making. Just think differently. So prep all your papers. Say, okay, I've got 5 oval frames and 5 rectangular because I've got these. Guess what? I can cut all my backgrounds at one time. If it's not in the Sidekick, if you have the fold-away, the Big Shot, the Vagabond, then you could just lay all 5 at one time and cut them out because you get 5 of the same die in that. So again, it's just about how you think through the making part. But it's just fun. To me, it was a very cool way to turn something that was kind of, just simple, because it was for Halloween. It's supposed to put in those creepy portraits, and yeah, you can paint them black and glitter them, but man, I think that they certainly make really charming ornaments. And whether you cover the back in fabric or felt or, well, anything. It could be sparkly paper, or you could just leave it as is, right? Sign your name on it and be done. I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of the handmade appearance, but I know some people, if it's on a tree, you don't want it spinning around. But yeah, see? Yeah, don't you wish these were around now? Yeah, me too. I mean, well, I don't, because I have a lot of them, but that's the thing, that sometimes you can look at something and if you like it, you get it, because it's going to come around where it's going to become relevant again. Right? I think that's good. Now I just tied a little bit of string through the top, and that's it. Right? The other thing, and I saw somebody mention that these are really great for junk journaling. I know many of you are following my friend Allie Edwards, and you're doing your December Daily. You can do her kit, right? This is actually her December Daily album, but this year we sized these pocket cards. And yes, I spoke to Allie before we did it. We sized these pocket cards to fit her December Daily pockets, right? So you can see that if you're into that, I love this size album. But yeah, these cards this year were sized specifically for December Daily. But maybe you're using all the different cards and papers that she offers as well. But it's just nice to have that. If you're into vintage, but you still want to do December Daily, we kept that in mind because we know many people do it. Well, I have it as well. So there you go. Fun ideas. Fun ideas out of stuff. So look around. Even if you don't have these, look for other things. I mean, idea-ology, there are other frames in there. We have a lot of great metal frames, but I just wanted something that was a bit more like shrunken down home decor, but obviously not everybody else did. Not everything's good, right? Not everything's a winner, but it is what it is. Bye-bye. Okay. Oh, Mario, you're killing me. That's going to be funny. He'll just walk around. That'll be like in the next meeting too. He's just going to walk in and be like, bye-bye. Okay, let's keep going. We have a few things to keep talking about. This one I'm not going to demo from start to finish. There are demos out there. I know that there's many makers, from Rochelle to Stacy to, gosh, maybe even Paula did one. I know that they're out there. Maybe Emma's even done them. And that's really about these guys, these Salvaged Santa and Snowman. Initially, when these first came out, one year we had Santas, one year we had Snowmen. They used to be sold in a 2-pack. And luckily, instead of them going away, which they were, we actually have the Salvaged Santa and Snowman as a duo pack. And they've maintained. Yeah, they've maintained. They'll be back another year, which is good. But you never know. But you might see them online a lot, and you see them painted and you think, oh my gosh, that's so charming. It's so great. It's very, very easy to do. Okay. The other thing to remember is that not only can you paint it and make it sparkly, but you can also make them like little vintage foiled chocolate, right? That's another kind of cool vintage thing. So I'm just going to give you a couple of tips of how you can transform these guys. Instead of just doing metallic and alloy like we've been doing, there's got to be something different for these. Okay. So first thing to note, if you plan on painting them, okay, you're going to need to get yourself a tiny paintbrush, like literally the tiniest you possibly can.
How tiny?
I have no idea. This is a 12-0. I don't know what that means in painter world, but I know that you just need something small because you're going to be painting kind of all over the place. Okay. From a paint perspective, same thing, distress paint for the win. You probably need like a half of a dot of something if you can. Okay. And I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you're just going to get the idea. I say that and you watch, I'll probably end up doing the whole thing. I even think on Stacy, she talked about maybe even painting some holly. I think she did on one of hers. So a little bit of black, just all sorts of things. And the same thing is going to be used for both. So whether you're doing it directly onto, oh my gosh, look at the top of this candied apple. Look how gross that is. I need to clean that off. You know, little paint. Oh, I love that. Clean that right off. You're going to use the same thing whether you're doing it on direct or onto foil. It's still going to be distress paint. Alcohol ink is just, in my opinion, is too fluid to paint on the foil, right? You put it there, it's going to just go everywhere. All right, let me clean that crime scene off of my fingers because now I have red everywhere. Okay. Okay, so before we start painting, this is just going to go direct onto this resin. Just going to paint it on. If you're going to do the Santa, easiest thing to do is to find some candy foil wrappers, and that's going to be a very thin foil. Okay, this isn't leafing, but this also isn't kitchen foil because kitchen foil is too thick. You can find this in the craft store where they do the candy melts, right? They sell like melted, the little candy melts or molds. That's what you want. You'll just find candy wrappers. You can probably even find them online. They're just called foil wrappers, but that's what you want. If you eat a lot of Hershey Kisses, you can just repurpose those silver ones, right? That's going to work too. But you're going to take this. Now, the easiest thing to do is to take whatever figure you want to foil and determine how you want to foil it. Now, remember on the candy foil, there's a pretty side and a dull side. So we want the pretty side that's going to be up, but you can hear it. It is foil. You're going to take Collage medium. Let me find my jar, which is over here. And you're going to paint Collage medium onto this element. So I would take my Collage medium, I would just take a paintbrush, right? A small paintbrush, and I would paint Collage medium all over this, holding onto his feet, right? Because I want to get Collage medium, and just paint it so it stays wet, but it's not soupy. Then you'll take your foil, you'll push this on, you'll wrap it around, and you're going to push it into the Collage medium, okay? Now, as you get around, don't worry about how this foil really covers or doesn't cover. There's great ways to patch it up. But then once it's held here, now you can take your brush, go into Collage medium, do the feet, and then you're going to finish the wrap. Now, what happens when you get to here? Could you fold this over? Yes, but that's a lot of foil. So you don't need it. So what I do is that when I'm working here, I'll just cut off. If I have two areas that meet, I'm just going to pick one side just to cut off. So I would just go with my scissors and just kind of cut off that little triangle, right? So now I can just bring that in. Does that make sense? It just makes it easier because sometimes if you get too bulky like that, it just becomes really chunky and you lose the detail. So just remember that as you go into a fold, just go in with your scissors and just cut out a section. Don't worry, but don't try to peel it, because if you've ever done foil, it just has a mind of its own and it runs. All right. Then when you get to the bottom, you can chop this off, you can fold it in, whatever. But at this point, it looks like a really kind of horrible looking baked potato. Take some type of brush, a stiff brush, right? It could be a blending brush, it could be a collage medium brush, but now you're going to go in with just a dry brush and you're going to start pushing into the foil. You could still use your fingers, right? So you're going to mold that and you're going to just push that in. And what that does is, you can see his face, see that? It just takes this foil and it contours it to the body. That's why we do collage medium, because we want this foil to actually stick to this surface. We don't want it to just kind of bubble up and as we go, it just creates these little air pockets. And the collage medium will just keep that foil exactly. I should have that glued, but I'm not doing it with glue, but you get the idea. So see how he kind of comes into focus? Yeah, just with a brush. All right, so once you're there, done all that, then you can just go in and paint. You're gonna paint exactly the same thing. I'll just do the snowman. I won't do the Santa, but at least you get the idea. So we're gonna take a little brush, just gonna pick up some color. Maybe I wanna go in with his nose. I like to balance with my pinky, but I'm still just I'm a slop mop guy. So don't worry. If you get stuff around so it kind of looks like a clown, I just clean it off. But you're just gonna go in and just paint those elements, right? I'll clean my brush. I've got a baby wipe off to the side. I'm just wiping that paint off with a baby wipe so it's not getting stuck in water. Then you could take, if you want the mittens to be a color. So could you do paint pens? I'm sure you could. You could do whatever's easy, but this is one of those that, you want to just put on some music, pour yourself a glass of wine or whatever it is that you want to enjoy, and just chill out and just paint. But don't worry about the detail too much. And I'll show you why. You want to stay in the lines-ish, but also just don't get too panicky where you're worrying about, oh, I need masking fluid and I need to do this. What if I go outside the lines? First of all, distress paint is very forgiving. So if you get paint where you don't want it, you can have another brush and you can clean it off. You can use your fingers. You can wipe off the paint while it's wet. Once it's dry, it's going to be permanent on there. But again, it doesn't really matter, okay? So you're just going to go in and do all your painting. I'll paint a little bit on the hat too, just to show you. I won't do much, but you get the idea, okay? Now the black paint is really juicy. I'm not quite sure. Oh my gosh, it just totally went out of the line. Look at that. Whoop, let me clean that off. The black distress paint, it's really wet. Not my favorite. It's just one of the formulation things. So my advice on that is, if this is too wet for what you're doing, you can just use regular black paint or just let it sit out a little bit longer and it will start to thicken up. I'm just going with a clean brush, right? And now I'm going to go right under there and I'll just wipe that off. Well, I'll try to, because really I need this like about an inch from my head. See, I'm trying to go out of camera range because I'm going to clean that off. My point is, distress paint will easily clean off with a clean brush. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go in and paint. You get the idea? Paint, 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 do the whole thing, be done. Then we're going to dry it. Just don't want to paint the entire time, but very, very simple that you can do however you want it to be. If you have paint pens, use paint pens. If you're more comfortable with a paint pen, then you should absolutely do that. It's just important to remember that whatever medium you're trying to use to color is a medium that is designed to go on to something non-porous, be that metal or be that resin, okay? That's really, really important. Yeah, I agree, Mel. That's totally the truth, right? Vintage stuff was not painted. The same thing with like vintage adverts, how they were like off-register printing. That's the beauty. But yeah, some people just get they kind of get a little caught up in their head. So once you're painted, right, then I even go in with a paper towel after it starts to dry, and I'll try to go in with a dry paper towel, and I'm just going to try to wear off some of this paint. So see how that paint is dry? It doesn't want to come off. But I'm still going to go in with a dry paper towel and just try to wear that away. See that? How I just wore that color off a little bit? To me, I just like that, right? On the hat, I'll try to scuff that up. So even though I painted it, I'm still now removing some of the paint, because to me, that's what makes it look cool, authentic. All right, So then I want to make sure that this is dry before the next step. So now I am going to touch it with my fingers and make sure that I don't have any paint that comes off. Then here's the aging part. Here's what's going to take it from here to here. Could you use walnut stain? Yes, but I wouldn't recommend walnut stain for this one because walnut stain is just a little brown. Hickory smoke is going to be kind of that perfect vintage. I think this is one that Rochelle did so long ago. I'm going to scribble some hickory smoke. I'm going to get another brush. I don't have, I'll just use this one. You could use, I would probably have a dedicated distress brush, but I'm just going to use a paintbrush just to show you you can still do that. And I'm going to turn this into kind of like a little soupy wash. You guys see that? And I'm just going to start dabbing it in there, just mopping some of that crayon. We don't want the crayon to be too soupy. It's kind of like the perfect balance, but you'll get the hang of it, really. And you're just going to dab that on there. Give the crayon a bit of time to dry, if you will. And I say that meaning give it a minute or so. If you have too much water, put some crayon down, mix more of that in, because the thicker it is, like you can see how one eye took that color good, the other eye didn't. So now I'm going to just try to get some in there. All right. Get some in that little eye socket. All right. And just mop that around, mop it around. You could even go in, so let's say you wanted it super grungy. Could you go in, I'll just show you, and could you color on it? Yes, but you see what happens, like when you try to put that on, there's not a big surface, and you're still going to need to go in and mop this around. So that would work either way. I just prefer to kind of make that slurry, if you will, and then just put that in there. You could go in and paint the eyes. I think I'll paint the eyes back in because I'm not going to be bothering with it. All right, so once I have that on there, let it dry for a second, or you can use a heat tool if you want, and then I'll normally just take my finger and just dab it. Could you take a paper towel? Yes, but this crayon is already starting to set. It's already starting to get fairly tacky. And that's it. Then we would glitter it. So how would you glitter it? Well, here's the thing to know. If you're going to glitter it and you have crayon on there, glossy accents or collage medium are going to be a bit of a challenge because both of those would require you to brush it on, right? So if you have to go in and brush glossy accents on, it's going to start to react, not the paint, but it's going to react the crayon. It's not the end of the world, right? But if you want to avoid that, I'll just share another little tip of how we can add glitter to something, right? And this, I'll just hold these up. Same thing, so you would paint, you know, whatever color in there, tattered rose, antique linen, hickory smoke, pumice. You can do a little white on the fur, a little red, but see how it's just really, you want a lot of that foil exposed to show it. So as you're painting, you can continue to wipe off that paint so it's not completely opaque. Same thing with the crayon over the top. That's what really makes this go from, you know, astronaut aluminum into something a little bit more vintage. It's that hickory smoke crayon. All right, there you go. So next, we'll just add a little sparkle. We doing good, Mario?
You're doing great.
Okay, just keeping it up.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
You know, I'd like to sit here and just paint all day, but I don't think that's probably wise during a demo. So, but I've got a lot of stuff that I get to finish, so it's good.
You do have a lot.
That's why we did all the prep last night, because I told you, I'm like, I cannot paint like 10 characters during the whole live. I know it would be fun to watch, but I really can't. Okay, some things that we can, oop, almost knocked that. Some things that we could do to apply some glitter. I'll take this and I'll take this. We're going to use a glitter duster. Now, could you pour rock candy? Yes, but a glitter duster is just it's an empty container sold by Stampers Anonymous. You can pour in any kind of glitter. In here is rock candy. You're going to turn this little schnozzle, and then when you push this down, you're going to have, there you go. Can you see it on my hands? There it is. The light hits it. It's going to dust the glitter. I just do that because I want this to be kind of just very subtle sparkle versus covered, but you do you. You do whatever's going to work. Next is going to be resist spray. Resist spray is just going to allow me to put on a very thin liquid glue, if you will, because resist spray is kind of like a sticky glue, and it's going to allow the glitter to go on. Again, if you don't have this, can you paint on glossy accents? Yes, but just keep in mind that when you do, it is going to react that crayon that's there. Okay? So, just going to make sure my resist spray is ready to go. I've got my little snowman there. Just give it a little blast there. And he would have been totally painted, right? I would have done proper, but for the sake of the demo, you get it. Resist spray when you're done using it, unscrew it, take this off, put the tube like in the bottom of your sink, run some water and spray water through it to flush it out. That'll keep it from clogging up. Then we're just going to take this and we're going to dust this with glitter. Now you can move this to a separate piece of paper so you can take the glitter and reuse it. That's fine. But you'll see, let me just see if I can get the camera to pick it up. There you go. See how that glitter's coming out?
That's cool.
It's very cool. It's just, and that's just going to give him that perfect little sugary, beautiful look. Really simple. It is very simple. I mean, I know my paint job is less than, I was going to say less than stellar, but then that would have caused something. But you know what I mean? Like I would go in and paint, but you can see even when you paint it, you still want to go in and rub that off because that's what's going to give it that charm. You can color in the eyes and the buttons, but you get the idea that the brighter it is, it's still going to show through with that rock candy and the duster. Different tools for different things. It's really, really simple to go in because, again, rock candy, nothing to be afraid of. It doesn't go airborne. It's really simple. That's why it's in the line, because it's good. Okay, so those were really ideas of how to transform things. Okay, I'll just take out just a bunch of different elements. Put that over there. Take that over there. I'm just trying to make myself a little bit of room here, if we can, because you never know. Let's see, what do I got? Okay, perfect. So next, what I want to do is just show you some ideas of how to put it all together. I'm clearing the space because I'm going to take this down, get rid of the media mat, and just show just about like, I'll put this down here. That's fine. Thanks. Just talk about like connecting the dots, because sometimes even though you see all those things, you still think like, okay, well, like, how can I put stuff together? How do I get that? All right, I'm gonna just take some of this. I'll take some of Paula's makes. That'll be good. I've got that. Okay, cool. All right. So the first one, we doing okay, Mario?
We're doing so
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Someone asked, can you use antique wax? But I don't know what that's about. So.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either.
Okay.
I mean, like.
I don't know what antique wax is other than old wax.
Well, like if you're antiquing with wax, you could try wax. I mean, on like the Snowman or something instead of crayon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you use what you have.
Give it a go. Try it.
Yeah. I demo with what I use, but yeah, use what you have. Try it. Okay. Another Halloween thing, test tubes. I love these because they're glass, right? I know you could buy plastic test tubes, really inexpensive for party favors, but to me, there's just something about glass that makes it, well, very nostalgic, and that's what I love. These came out for Halloween. Some people might still have them in, but I just had this idea rolling around in my head, and it's like I needed to see if I could do that. So what I wanted to do is just create something really cute, really simple, really fun, and really quirky that could be an ornament or whatever. And to me, it was just creating like a little snowman, some assembly required, right? So this one says Frosty, this says Magic, this one says Winter, but you could even do some assembly required if you wanted to. And it's really quite charming and just fun. It's quirky. You could put a screw eye in the top of this cork, and then this could be an ornament. But I just think that these little guys, I'll put them in here so we can get my hand out of the shot. I got them in the portion cup, but they're very cute and really fun. I think this would also be fun for kids to make, but you get the idea and you can run with it in whatever you do. What I use for the metal is I use story sticks. These are no longer available either. These are previous Christmases, but these have been out for many years. So maybe you have some of these in your stash. If you don't, well, make a little tag, stamp something, write something, find another little embellishment. But I did kind of the same crayon thing, used some baker's twine. But all I did for these guys is I took test tubes, I took my Mica Flakes because I liked the idea that I felt that Mica Flakes were just heavier than glitter. It just made it look more like snow. And then a very simple thing to do for the snowman pieces is you just go get yourself a block of clay. I am no clay artist, so I know you can buy clay in colors. That's just not who I am. I'm a maker. So I just took white clay and I made the stuff. So it was nothing. Literally take a piece of white clay, roll it up like a carrot, press it down on the end of my mat. I took my fingernail just to make some little dents. You guys see that? Baked it, Then I went in and did some distress paint. See some on my fingernail too. So distress paint, painted that orange, let it dry, and yep, you know it, walnut stained crayon, and that just filled in all those little dents from my fingernail, and it made a carrot. And for the eyes, well, you just make little balls of clay. Bake those, and then just paint them with black, just rolling in your fingers. So now you just have little components. But you can find a lot of different ideas. You could use buttons, you use whatever. But I think just the idea is just creating something that's really charming. And this is something that you could put with a gift card, right? Maybe you're going to give it to your friend or a coworker. Just something charming. Again, if it was a screw eye and an ornament that you put with a Starbucks card or something, or a See's Candy card, it's just a way of adding that little handmade. And that's the whole thing about ideology, is I want you guys to see how you can take something that you might see on the shelf or in your craft room and transform it for the holidays. And it doesn't take a lot. It just takes, it's going to take some paint or some glitter, in this case, a little block of clay. And you can make little components. And yeah, I've seen these where it says, you know, some assembly required. Like there's so many different things that you can do to just make, I don't know, just cute little things. And I like the idea, again, of just a small little test tube. I designed these because most test tubes that I found through the years are long. And I just didn't like that, right? I didn't want it to look like a giant test tube. I really wanted more of a short vial. So that's why we did them this size, because all the ones I was finding, I'm like, I don't want a giant long tube. But that's it. That's the idea for that. Really quite simple, right? Okay. Next idea. Boy, we're just going to be rolling with it. We're going to be rolling in it. Next idea are going to be these. There's nothing quicker than this. This is something that I shared last year in this make, when I was talking about taking your ephemera and your papers and making little mini collages and cutting them up. And people are like, I'm so on it. This is so me. So what we did this year is we turned this into a product, because many of you did it and many of you said, oh, I'd love to, but I really don't even have time to make these collages. So these are collage tiles. These are from Idea-ology. There are 72 pieces, 2 each of 36 designs. These little tiles, they're just single-sided. They're nothing flashy. You could glue them on a lot of different things, but essentially it's just the collage that I did that we scanned in, even with the little crayon smudge. I mean, I made a new set so we could scan them in. So they're a little different than the original one, but they're great little squares to make an easy collage project. You simply glue them on. You could use them on a card front. That could be the card. You could tile them however you want. You could put them on a wood panel. You could take a dollar store frame and frame them as art. It could be its own work of art in and of itself. You can add an embellishment to it. There's many things that you can do with the collage tiles. I like the idea of this. This panel, you can also sell them in Idea-ology, because I needed a panel that was the right size, because the ones I was finding in the craft store, like this one that I bought initially, I had to cut my paper at some weird, 7/16 size. But here we just wanted to just create just regular uniform size squares that you could put on everything that you wanted to use, right? So we'll talk about how we can take this and change it into something next level. So here is a make that Paula sent. Absolutely beautiful make. And the best part is that Paula created a tutorial for this make that she posts on her blog today. So if you want to learn how to make this make, she's got all the details on her blog on how to do it. Oh, they're going to post the link in the chat. Awesome. So what this is the Idea-ology vignette panel. So you can see that it's nice and charred already. And Paula went in and used the collage tiles, but then to break up the pattern, she went in and just cut up backdrops, right? That's where you get the stripes and the plaids. And so you can cut up your pattern paper, your backdrops, whatever. You don't have to use all collage. If all collage, like this, is too overwhelming, right? You could just do that. So she's got the tutorial on her blog. The other thing that is great, there's a baseboard frame, right? There, she's so absolutely happy. Paper dolls, seasonal. There's a little mirrored stars where Paula used them right there. Look at the little tiny clip. More baseboard, glitter. There's a lantern. So now you can see there's a lantern painted. Tiny lights through there. So there's your tiny lights that go in. But she used the tiny lights to not only go in the lantern, but now we're going to go around to this tree. So take a look at the tree. There you can see the snowballs. Beautiful little icy snowballs. But this I thought was really clever. These are the bubbles. So not the baubles, the clear ones. But instead of doing glitter, she just went in with the alloy, right? And just a little bit of alloy. You can see I'll turn off the light so you can see. See, they have just a little bit of gold on them. You can also use mixative. Again, it just depends on what you want to use. Probably some mushroom was involved in there, but created those beautiful ornaments that when the tree lights up, you can actually see through them. Because unlike baubles that are pearl, bubbles are translucent. So I think they also make great ornaments. It's nice that you can do ornaments, something that's a little bit more vintage, and then do the snowballs. And this is just a vintage folding ruler. What a great ledge that is. But I love just seeing the snowballs around there, little twine. So a great make, but this is showing you how you can just take a pack of paper and glue them down to a panel, right? Whether it's an idea-ology panel or whether it's a frame or whatever that is, and then just start adding your little trinkety things that maybe you've been making, you know? Maybe you got a whole tool case of trees, you don't know what to do with them. Well, this is what you do with them, right? You can cut them off into the back, you can remove the bottom, you can add the tree stand. It's just showing you how you can take the ideas that we've been sharing and put them to use, okay? Very, very cool way to see how the tiles can be used. And I love the idea of not just sticking to the tiles. If that's easiest for you because it's done, that's great. But you can also sit there, get out your little mini trimmer and chop up your little squares, right? Easy, easy measurement. So again, that's on Paula's blog. Thanks, P, for doing that. It's really nice. That's really nice. All right. The next one I'll share. Let's see. We're doing okay? I got just a couple more things. It shouldn't be too bad. All right. Okay. So next I wanted just to talk about some other ideas that we could do when we're taking different components. Halloween. Two of the favorite things I think for Halloween. The Drippy candles inspired by Tammy B when she did that tutorial when we did the glue gun, but then we did them in idea-ology in resin. These were only out in Halloween. I wish I would have done them for both seasons because I know many of you were like, we want Drippy candles for Christmas, but if you stocked up on them for Halloween, good on you because they're great for Christmas. The candle stands were another one. They're metal and they're beautiful together. But I just wanted to share like what can you do with these that you can't get past the Halloween-ness of them. Well, the beauty of the Drippy candles is what you pair them with changes them from what I think being, because I wanted them grungy, right? But some people are like, oh, but you can paint them. Yes, you can. You can do alloy, you can paint, you can change everything about them. But if you take them, you can transform them and make them very, very festive, right? So look at that. There's some mica flakes here. So if I tip this, the mica is going to fall out, but that's okay. But you can see this wonderful little festive, almost a centerpiece. And I'll just show you what it essentially is. This is taking these, pairing them with your favorite Sizzix die cuts. I told you as a compartmental maker that you can sit there with your mica stains, your oxides, whatever. And for those of you making backgrounds, you're like, what am I going to do with backgrounds? You're going to cut those suckers up is what you should be doing with them. You don't look at them and think, oh, they're too pretty they have to be a card. Are you kidding? It's paper. It's paper that you want to use. So here you can see these backgrounds and just taking your dyes, any of your greenery dyes, and you could cut a lot of stuff out of a background. You could still use that, I'm sure, as a background for a card. So a lot of times I like to save the backgrounds because to me, it could be a background, right? The post I did for Thanksgiving with those leaves, those were leftover die cuts from cutting out a leaf. I just chopped them into squares and I'm like, that's a cool panel. So your discards are good, but then you have this pile of stuff. Instead of cutting for one make at a time, you have things, right? You have things that could be, you've got your pine needles, you've got holly leaves. If you have the tiny tattered floral, you can make the little pine cones. You have your poinsettias, but remember if you have the shaping kit, right? Take that shaping kit and shape your flowers. So if you wanted to create that, I think my shaping kit is down here. Oh, put that away. I don't get that out. But your shaping kit, right? The Sizzix one. I love my shaping kit because look at that. That adds a little element that could go onto a napkin ring, whatever it is that you have. But what I did is just created some greens, hot glued them together, and stuck them down. And I decided, okay, I'm going to do the candles. I think that's really cool. I'll do these Drippy candles. I love the candle stands. I didn't do anything to them because, well, I love that vintage finish. I glue them on. When I glue on the candles, I prefer Collage medium. It takes a little while to dry, but it's more stable than hot glue, personally. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to use them. These are some of the dyes I use, by the way. Just stuff, random, you know, some old, some new, but use the stuff that you have. I agree, says it is a game changer. I like the whole shape of it. So I wanted to do, oh, pun intended. I wanted to do a display dome, okay? But here was the challenge. So the display dome from Idea-ology, again, glass, and it comes with this cork base. The challenge is, you can see that the cork creates about a 1/2 inch riser. And when I went to put the drippy candles on there, the candles didn't fit. So I'm like, dang, like, what am I gonna do? Simple. I just went and found something else in the house. This happens to be the lid of a canning jar, but it could be anything. And by removing the cork, this now sits over the top of this, and this becomes, now I can tip it sideways, this becomes my make because my candles fit in there. So my point is if you like to make display things, what I love about the display dome is the size of this, okay? I love this. When do I have time to do this? Ruth, I did all of this last night, yesterday. Every single thing from the cars being made to all this was yesterday. So it takes me one day. Because the idea is when you go, you just let them play, right? We were inking and die cutting and Mario was cranking away on those die cuts and, right? We had a good day. Yeah, if you block yourself out time to just play with no other responsibilities, it's amazing what you can achieve if you don't overthink it. So the beauty of this is I wanted to be able to change this out. So what I did is on my candles, so now you can see it. So my advice is when you're out, if you're out junking, or if you go around your house, look at lids to jars, look at tins, look at things that could be a base. But what it did is by getting rid of the cork, it gave me the height I needed. So if you're ever trying to make something in a display dome and what you want to put in there doesn't fit, just change your base though it's flat, right? Really, really simple. Just to absolutely change it. And I think it's great, but here's what I wanted to do. I love this base, of course. Now, if I was giving this away, well, then I would just give that away, but I'm going to probably want to change this out. So here's kind of my cheat. I do have some mica flakes. You can see they fell here. I'll just dump these out because I like a little bit of loose mica. You could glue this, but let's say you had something that you wanted to use all around. Another great tip when you're making something for yourself that you think is going to be a decor element, these are simply put on with poster putty. Yep, just that white putty that I talk about all the time that will roll off, right? We talked about it. I think they call it blue tack in the UK. Poster putty is what I use to stick this down because now I can remove all these pieces and I could use this again or use it for something else. If you were going to make this as a gift, heck, poster putty might even be your jam. I use it a lot of times if I'm trying to stick something down and hot glue isn't working and double stick tape, because see, you can push and twist. I just put some of that putty on there. Pretty amazing stuff, right? Anyway, that's just an idea of how you can create something super charming just in a display dome.
And there go all the vintage lids.
Well, I mean, it could be anything. It could be, yeah, it could be a lid. It could be a pie tin. There's so many options, but the whole idea was get rid of this, right? Get rid of.
Be a vintage lid around.
People can start making vintage lids. They're going to be going looking for probably all sorts of circular things, right? All right, let me just get rid of this mica. Let's scrape that off. That's good. All right. Then this one. Look at this one. Okay. So this was just to show you another idea that if you created something, look at this tree. So this tree, I wanted it to be, well, really pretty. I didn't want it to necessarily be a green tree. You don't have to do green all the time. This one is done with brushed pewter spray stain. It's a metallic stain. So that's why the tree looks metallic. And then it's got that, I love that tinsel glitter. It's so beautiful. Sad it's not coming back. But it's got the tinsel distress glitter on there. And then I just put it in a tin little tray. Again, another little plate you could find. This is vintage, right? So this is just a vintage one. These baubles are vintage. Little mica just sprinkled on the plate. But my point being is that you can make one element and really create a scene from junk finds. Idea-ology was inspired by junk. Idea-ology is inspired by vintage finds, whether it's ephemera, photos, trinkets, hardware. So it is the perfect meld when you're going around looking at, if you've not been to a little antique store or flea market, walk around because you could be inspired by little things and you've got just that element to bring together a scene, whether this is going to be a gift, something decorative. It's just, I love that. I love just taking a little child's plate, that's all this is, and changing it into something beautiful and sophisticated by adding some vintage ornaments. I can't tip it because Mica will go everywhere, but you get the idea. All right. Okay. All right. We're doing good. We're moving and grooving. Okay. So what if you're into paper? Well, I'll just do this quick little thing. I got stuff everywhere. The crafter math was real last time. So what if you're into paper? Don't fret. If you're not into all of this dimensional stuff, you're like, look, this has been fun, but I don't want a candlestick or a tree or a frame. I'm just a paper maker. That's cool. Don't underestimate what your products can do to alter paper, right? Whether that's ephemera or layers or anything like that. What you can do is you can take something, these happen to be idea-ology layers. The difference between layers and ephemera, layers are coated, right? It's a coated paper, whereas ephemera is not coated, but it's going to work for either one. Doesn't really matter. What I'm going to share with you is going to work. I think I'll do that for Santa. I love all of this idea-ology stuff. You can do this on baseboards, the same. All right, there you go. I love that. Okay, now we'll take a little bit of ephemera, just so you can see it totally works on ephemera as well. Ooh, I'll do that, a little poinsettia. Okay, my point is it could be anything that you have. A very quick way you can change this. We're going to go back to our splat box. We're going to go back to that. This time I'm going to put in a little bit of wax paper or parchment paper. You could use a paper towel. I just prefer to use that parchment paper. I'm going to take, or wax paper, either one. Take that and my resist spray. And all we need to do is we'll take those pieces, whatever it is that you want to have, and and I would put these as close together as possible because you're just going to use less medium that way. You could do one at a time if you wanted to, okay? So now I'm just going to go in with my resist spray and just spray. You can see it's already starting to get a little crabby because I didn't rinse it, but that's all right. So resist spray goes on kind of purple. Can you guys see that color? There you go. It's purpley. It's by design because I want to be able to see that it's on there. Then I'm going to go in with my glitter duster. I'm going to just dust the glitter. Could you essentially take resist spray and paint it on? Sure you could, right? Why resist spray? Could you just do glossy accents or collage medium? Yep, you could do that too. I'll show you the difference. Could you pour the glitter on? Yes, but I prefer dusting. So I'm just using my thumb, dusting. You may not see anything happening, but I see that this stuff is dusting everywhere. I like just a dust of it. Believe it or not, you're not using as much as you probably think. Close it. Okay. Let this dry. Or, in Tim World, dry with a heat tool. Either one. Doesn't really matter. A little warm air. I'm impatient. So again, it could be whatever, but I just like resist spray. Now remember, if you're not a sprayer, you can take resist spray and paint it on with a paintbrush. But you're going to want to clean your brush the same way you would do if you were using it with glue. What I like about resist spray as a glue is it's just fluid. It's just liquid. It's so simple to do. And don't worry if your paper curls up. It's not a problem. It's mostly curling up just because of the heat. And ephemera is thinner, so you can see it's curling, whereas layers, they're staying a little flatter because, well, they're thicker. You could also do this to baseboard, chipboard, well, really whatever it is you have. I just want to dry the glue. Okay, so once this is dry, just going to dust off the excess, but here's what we've done, right? We've created this beautiful, sparkly piece from ephemera, from just paper. We've transformed it into something, and what the resist spray does is it gives you not only the sparkle, but those little dots, right? So I believe here, Paula, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Paula put on glitter with maybe some collage medium, because you can also use collage medium, because collage medium can give you those nice linear brush strokes. Maybe she used resist spray. I kind of think it's collage medium, but you can brush that on, but you can also dust this. So it's the same idea as resist spray. So whether you use resist spray or, let me get this off of this wax paper. There we go. So the resist spray I like because it's giving me kind of that enamel-y look, but if you're not going for that.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, so if you're not going for the enamel-y look and you want it just to kind of remain just sparkly on the surface, collage medium. So you have total different options. I really love the the texture and look, they both work. To me, they're both getting this out. Imagine if that was a paper towel. That would have been like a no-go. But look at that. See, just look at how sparkly that is. Just think it's so cool. And just a great way to change this up. And then you could put it on a card. Because now you've added to that. And it's very quick because you can take those and just go for it. You don't have to do one piece at a time. It's all about getting your paper pieces ready, whether they're going to go into a junk journal, because see, you can glue that down. But now it has a whole different feel than just plain matte paper. Okay? So when it comes to adding elements to paper, Paula is just one of those people that just take it and run with it. So here is a cool journal. I think this is called, I don't know what it's called, Christmas Memories. I don't know the name of this. She's named this, but
Christmas memories.
see, Christmas Memories. So this, for those of you that follow Paula Cheney, she offers kits. I don't want to say every Christmas because she may not do it every Christmas, but during the holidays she creates kits, and she does a limited number. And if you're on her mailing list, those people that buy them. She still has some of this kit
I just put the link.
available. Thanks. She sells the kits on her blog, so if you don't follow her or sign up for a newsletter, you really should, because it's very cool. You get everything that you need and the instructions. But this is a book that she created for Idea-ology Live. But you can see all the things that we talked about, right? The glittering, the adding the crayons. This is using some collage paper on linen. But take a look at this wonderful book of layers and file folders. And yep, there are the seals and paper dolls. I love the tinted paper dolls, the stickers, all sorts of cool little interaction, you know, being able to pull things out. I love the idea of stickers. It's a cool way to take all the paper elements and components and mix them together. That's just what I love, because these idea-ology file folders, to make a journal out of this, it's quite a bit of fun. Little pockets there. Wonderful. So there's the Santa, just to kind of give you a comparison. So he's great like that. He's great with just crayon. See, just changes the finish. Not that you have to do that. And you don't even have to do the glitter if you don't want to. You might just want to do resist spray. It's just fun to know that you can take a lot of these elements that you see, like remnant rubs. I love seeing the remnant rubs, right? This is this particular year's rubs. We're changing them for next year. But it's so cool to see all these pieces. And if you're not one of those that can take these elements and know how to kind of put them together, you know, where you're like, well, what do I do with each thing? You know, the nice thing about these elements being in a kit is that you understand them. See, I love that. Look at that. I was just looking. It's tiny attacher of those layers on a string. It's so freaking clever, right? Charming. Unbelievable, right? And I love just the tie. So that's just another great thing to remember, that you can make a book for yourself. You can take these pieces, put them on a card, put them on a collage. Whatever it is that you want to create, you can create.